Chapter 178. A plan to escape. When Ah captured King Lucier of Hittite alive, he let a cat sit on the throne in the middle and enjoy roasted wine while the king watched from the side. This scene enraged the court supreme mage Celia. Ah had successfully ambushed and captured the king right under her nose, which was a great humiliation to her, and this was even more intolerable. Celia challenged Ah to a duel, which Ah agreed to. Later, at the banquet for peace talks between the two countries, the matter was brought up again, and the pharaohs of Igut and King Hittite even said that they wanted to witness the duel. Although a duel was only an act between people, the duel between Celia and Ah was equivalent to an agreement between the two monarchs. Unfortunately, King Lucier and Lazith II Pharaoh had died one after another, and even the successor of Pharaoh Merneptah could not object to Ah participating in this duel that was known to the world. Therefore, this was the best opportunity for Ah to leave Igut. In fact, this duel should have been held long ago, but there were many unexpected factors that delayed it. Ah Sui's army had just returned to Igut when the Uruk Legion of the Kingdom of Babylon attacked, and this battle established the glory of the supreme general of the empire. As soon as this battle subsided, a war between Hittite and the Kingdom of Babylon broke out at the northern end of the Saya Desert. Prince Ashur and Goliath were commanding the battle on the front lines, and just as they were about to achieve a complete victory, news suddenly came from the capital of Hittite, Hattusha. King Lucier had died, and Ashur's elder brother Anes had succeeded as the new king with the support of the remaining courtiers, and urgently summoned Prince Ashur to return to the capital to attend Lucier's funeral. Lucier's intention for Prince Ashur to command the army and for Goliath to assist him was obvious. He wanted to pass the throne to Ashur so that he could build up his reputation before he succeeded the throne. Lucier's death was very sudden, and everyone suspected that it was related to the struggle for the throne. If Prince Ashur really relinquished his military power and returned to the capital, it would be like sending a sheep into a tiger's den. With the consent of Goliath and the support of the frontline generals, Prince Ashur quickly negotiated an end to the war with the Kingdom of Babylon, and led the elites of the army and the generals back to the capital in the name of participating in the national mourning. The new king, Anes, had a guilty conscience to begin with. He knew best whether there was any inside story behind Lucier's death, and he did not expect Prince Ashur to return with an army. Anes succeeded the throne with the support of Chancellor Juguli, and in a panic, he listened to the Chancellor's advice and activated the magic formation protecting the capital, keeping everyone outside the city, so that Prince Ashur could enter the city alone to face his crimes against the kingdom. Ashur had not fully obeyed the king's orders, but he was not guilty. Anes did not expect the war to end so quickly. His original order was for Ashur to hand over the position of commander-in-chief to Goliath and return to attend the funeral. In the end, the war was over, the Kingdom of Babylon retreated, and Goliath and the other generals accompanied Ashur back. Ashur did not appear to be at fault, but had instead made a great contribution to the kingdom. The generals were not going to let it go. They spread the news that Prince Anes had killed his father to usurp the throne, and now he was going to kill his meritorious subjects. They planned to launch a mutiny and attack the capital. It looked like a civil war was about to break out. The city of Hattusha was sturdy and protected by a divine spell formation, making it very difficult to attack. No matter who won, the final outcome would be a lose-lose situation. At this critical juncture, Goliath called the Grand Elder of the Hittite Academy and entered the capital alone. He was the honorary chief elder of the Hittite Academy and had great prestige in the kingdom, so no one stopped him. Goliath went to the palace to see the new king and reported on the front lines. He asked, "Your Majesty, you should know the outcome. If Prince Ashur decides to launch a mutiny and the capital cannot be defended, what will happen to you, and what will happen to the Hittite kingdom? Do you want to hurt the whole kingdom in a civil war and end up dead, or do you want a dignified solution?" Anes did not want to hear this, so he detained Goliath in the palace in the name of discussing state affairs, but this caused the various factions in the capital to split and the people to be dissatisfied. The Hittite Academy was the first to object to the king's decision to detain Goliath, and even said that if the chief elder was not released, they would stop operating the magic formation protecting the capital. Even if Goliath did not resist, Anes would not dare to kill him. If the new king did not kill Goliath, they could still negotiate, but if he killed Goliath, it would definitely lead to a mutiny. King Ashur sent Prime Minister Juguli to persuade Goliath to support him. Juguli's nephew was Goliath's favorite student, Raphael, and he thought that Goliath and he were on the same side. However, Goliath asked the Prime Minister, "I won't ask how King Lucier died, but do you know what will happen to you? Do you want to bury yourself when the capital is breached and the kingdom suffers great damage, or do you want to end this palace coup with dignity and not let the innocent soldiers and people die with you? I can guarantee the safety of your family, as long as you do as I say and persuade Aeneas. Now he is very afraid, but he refuses to listen to me." In the end, Goliath was released from the palace, and the new king ordered him to live in the Hittite Academy of Magic, which was equivalent to a disguised house arrest. At this time, outside the capital, Ashur had led his army to surround all the cities in the capital, and there was a lot of news being passed around the city. The final resolution of the incident was unknown to outsiders, but there was no coup or mutiny in the Hittite kingdom. The mages of the capital stopped the magic formation protecting the city, and Prince Ashur and the generals led hundreds of personal guards into the city and stayed in their mansions. The Hittite Academy and the Hittite main shrine each sent people to protect the palace and Prince Ashur's mansion. That night, the new king Aeneas, who had just succeeded the throne for a month, announced his abdication and passed the throne to Ashur. Ashur had reclaimed the throne, and he might have achieved his goal if he had launched a mutiny, but the meaning was completely different now. Aeneas had abdicated the throne of his own accord, and the new king who had just succeeded the throne issued an edict, claiming that due to the sudden death of his father, the kingdom could not be without a monarch for even a day, so he had temporarily taken over the throne to stabilize the situation. Now that the wise and mighty Prince Ashur had returned, and his father had already ordered Ashur to be the new king, Aeneas' mission was finally completed, and the throne was officially passed to Ashur. This was the best ending for Aeneas. He was still the official monarch of the Hittite kingdom, not a usurper, but a king who had abdicated the throne of his own accord. His short one-month reign as king could be considered a meritorious deed for the kingdom. This was also the result of a compromise between the various factions, and Goliath made Ashur promise not to hold anyone involved in the coup accountable. Given the circumstances, even if Aeneas did not want to agree, someone else would make him agree. Prince Ashur succeeded the throne smoothly, avoiding the civil war that would have divided the kingdom. Prime Minister Juguli resigned due to illness, but he still enjoyed the glorious title of nobility, and his family was saved. Although Ashur promised not to hold the ministers accountable, changes in power and purges were inevitable, and the resignation of the prime minister was one such example. Goliath stayed in the capital until the situation stabilized before leaving. His contributions were so great that King Ashur did not know how to reward him. Instead, he granted Goliath the honor of not having to bow in front of the king, and gave him a special seat in the palace. He even asked Goliath in person, "Lord Goliath, you are like a father to me, how can I thank you?" Goliath smiled. "Everything I have done is for the people of Hittite. If your majesty wishes to thank me, please treat the kingdom well. Let me live the life I want, and I will thank your majesty for that." Doing what one loved was the greatest reward, and almost no one could obtain it, but Goliath did. Goliath did not want to stay in the capital to be a powerful minister, and Ashur could not force him. He returned to Saya and promoted Walter to be the chief priest of the city, while he continued to hold the glory of being the chief elder of the Hittite Academy of Magic. Ashur had wanted to appoint Raphael as the minister of the interior of the kingdom, which was to win over the forces that had originally supported Aeneas' faction, and also to give face to Goliath. But Raphael had other ambitions, and remained in Saya as the high priest. The court supreme mage Celia had also experienced this series of events, and naturally had no time to duel with Ao. During this period of time, she was also on the verge of breaking through to the 8th level and needed to concentrate on her training. By the time she officially achieved the 8th level, peace had returned to the Hittite kingdom, and a messenger could be sent to Ao to determine the time and place for the duel. Before Celia's messenger could set off, Ao's messenger arrived first, and that was John. John left Igut with his 36 personal guards, and at the same time, he had another mission, which was to find Celia to determine the time and place for the duel. John carried a letter written by Ao, on which was written, "You choose the place, in Hittite, I set the time, when I arrive." John grasped the timing and wanted to find Celia when Moses and the others were about to leave Igut. Celia's reply was quick, and she immediately sent a messenger to Igut and set the place for the duel, which was the camp where Ao had captured the king of Hittite. As for the time, of course, it was decided by the Supreme General himself after Ao arrived. Celia was ready at any time. When Celia's messenger arrived, Ao, who had refused to meet any guests, naturally had to personally receive him. He held a banquet to express his gratitude for the messenger's hard work. When the messenger saw Ao, the legendary Supreme General of the Empire of Igut, he couldn't help but be secretly surprised. Ao looked too young, just like a teenager, but he gave off such a profound feeling, like an unfathomable god. At the age of 16, Ao was already very strong, and his physique was no different from an adult. In an environment like Duk, the son of an old drunkard shouldered the burden of life at an early age. Opportunities also forced him to mature early. Later on, he was worshipped as a god by the barbarians, and his words and actions naturally carried a certain temperament. But these were not the main reasons. Ao had just experienced hundreds of years of time in Schrödinger's soul imprint. It was as if he was really there hundreds of years ago. The impression he gave off was that of a mature youth, more stable and tenacious than his peers. At this moment, Ao really gave off an unfathomable feeling. But his appearance hadn't changed much since he broke through the 7th level of the power of two sides at the age of 17. His face was still very handsome, with slightly curly short hair. Sometimes when he smiled, he looked like a child. The messenger originally had full confidence in his master, Celia. But after seeing Ao with his own eyes, his confidence was shaken. He wanted to hurry back and tell Celia about this feeling. The messenger was a young man in his 20s, with a round head and round eyes. His appearance was somewhat cute, but also delicate. His name was Rulio, and in front of Ao, he humbly called himself Ilu. He was a servant of Celia. Ao told Rulio that he would soon leave for the designated place on the southwest shore of the inland lake, and that he would inform Celia immediately when he arrived. Rulio smiled and said, "Supreme General does not need to inform Master Celia, I will wait for you there. As soon as you arrive, Master Celia will receive the news." Rulio said goodbye and left. Before leaving, he pointed to Schrödinger, who had been staying beside Ao, and said, "Is this cat the pet that the Supreme General brought to the battlefield? It really is extraordinary." Schrödinger sneezed and turned his neck to ignore Rulio. After he left, Schrödinger said to Ao, "This messenger is not human, have you noticed?" Ao was slightly startled. "I think this person is not simple, but I can't see that he is not human." "What do you mean?" "Schrödinger, you have all my knowledge, but after all, you have not reached my achievements in the past. You can see that this person is not ordinary, but you can't sense his innate breath. He should be similar to me in the past, both beasts who have opened their spiritual wisdom and have succeeded in their training. They can take human form, not the illusion of transformation magic or message magic, so you can't see it. Do you remember what Celia said when she challenged you to a duel?" Ao thought for a moment and replied, "She said to me at the time, 'When this war is over, I will bring my summoned beast, and you will bring this cat, and we will have a real duel.'" Schrödinger nodded and said, "Since she proposed to bring her summoned beast to a duel, that Celia must be a summoning magic master, and the summoned beast she mentioned is likely to be this Rulio. Now I have come to see my opponent in advance. You must be careful in this duel, and what you should really be wary of is the summoned beast." Ao had not practiced summoning magic, but he understood it. Mages raised some mutant beasts who had opened their spiritual wisdom, taught them all kinds of magical powers, and used magic to establish a soul contract so that they would accept the summoning of the mage to help them in battle. In a broad sense, in fact, Batet was also a summoned beast of Osiris. From a broader point of view, necromancy magic was also a kind of summoning magic, able to gather the power of living souls for one's own use. But the highest level of summoning magic in the world usually referred to a situation where a supreme mage made a soul contract with a powerful mutant beast, teaching them many of the secrets of human training and providing them with all kinds of help. In exchange, the summoned beast would appear in battle and help the supreme mage fight against powerful enemies. Sometimes the summoned beast was even more powerful than the master who summoned it, and the soul contract needed to be made voluntarily. After all, it was extremely difficult for beasts in the wild to train alone, and they might even be hunted down as demons. But with the protection and help of a supreme mage, there would be all kinds of unimaginable benefits and convenience. Ao nodded and said, I have seen Celia in action, and for a 7th level supreme mage, she is already very powerful. I haven't seen her for so long, maybe she has also broken through to the 8th level, but I am still confident that I will not lose to her. As for that Lilo, he has restrained his breath, and I can't see how powerful he is, but at least in terms of realm, he should not be inferior to me, and should be stronger than Celia. Schrödinger said worriedly, he has at least reached the 8th level, and the summoned beast is different from a human. You have met Elmar, right? She has the innate magic foundation, which does not change because of the power of awakening. Many mutant beasts do not need the power of the second awakening at all once they reach a higher level. Celia asked you to fight her and her summoned beast together with me, but unfortunately I do not have the power to help you fight now. Can you fight both of them alone? Ao looked at Schrödinger and smiled softly. Are you willing to be my summoned beast? Schrödinger's tone was indistinguishable from grievance or coquettishness. If you must let me be your summoned beast, of course, I will not refuse, but I can only do it for show. Ao laughed and said, why do you make it sound so pitiful? I am not Osiris, and you are not Batet. I have never regarded you as a pet or a summoned beast, and I will not let you do such a thing. As for the duel with Celia, I have already thought of a helper, and it can be regarded as his experience. Schrödinger suddenly reacted and said, you mean Elmar? I don't know how strong Elmar is now, but he should not be a match for that Lilo. Ao shook his head and said, I do not intend to let Elmar deal with Lilo. He only needs to hold back Celia, and I will deal with this powerful summoned beast myself. This duel will be very interesting. Let's not talk about this. This duel is just an excuse for me to follow Moses and leave Igut. What I care about most now is you. Schrödinger said, me? That's easy. Just like before, you put me in your bag and carry me on your back, and we will leave Igut together. As for unlocking the soul seal, you have done your best. There is no need to rush. Take your time. Do your own things first. Don't delay it because of me. Ao looked up at the sky and let out a long sigh, as if he felt a deep sense of regret. Schrödinger asked curiously, what's wrong with you? I rarely hear you sigh like this. It seems like you have found something, but also like you have lost something. Ao smiled and said, before the messenger arrived, I had already found out what the seal that imprisoned your soul is. As long as you are willing, you can unlock it at any time. But if you can't unlock it yourself, you will never be able to unlock it. Schrödinger was surprised and happy. Have you found a way to unlock the seal? Why wouldn't I be willing? Tell me quickly, I have waited for 100 years, and I have finally waited for this day. Chapter 179. I can't bear to part with you. Schrödinger lowered her head and was silent for a long time before replying, yes, I did not pass the test of fate, but I was not destroyed in the judgment of Armageddon either. This is what I have achieved after 300 years of practice. Although I am still a cat, I have the soul of Batet. Looked down at her and said, so you are not an ordinary cat. No cat can be as magical as you. You are the imprisoned goddess Batet. Although you don't want to hear me mention this name, it is still the truth. The reason why you can become such a magical cat is still because of the guidance of the Ennead. Either you give up completely, or you will still be imprisoned. You don't want to go back to being the goddess Batet, but you have not given up the experience that Batet once had. There was a deep unwillingness in Schrödinger's tone, Osiris once asked me to open my spiritual imprint to him, but I was unwilling. That is what I have gained after 300 years of practice, and it is impossible not to cherish it. I am not even willing to open it, let alone give it up. I can certainly understand your feelings, but what you have achieved after 300 years of practice is not the spiritual imprint, but the life and power that you have enjoyed for 300 years. Great Goddess Batet, please look at the people of this world, what have they left behind in their lives? The cat's head lowered even more. You are right, if I still have unwillingness in my heart, then how should the mortals of this world live? I have suffered enough. In your eyes, I am the most magical cat in the world, but who can understand the pain of such a cat? Certainly knew Schrödinger's pain, he was a witness of her spiritual imprint and had personally felt what she had gone through. Gently combed the cat's fur with his fingers and changed the subject. You refused to integrate your spiritual imprint into the soul of Osiris, but you took the initiative to open it to me. Schrödinger said in a low voice, this requires my own sincerity, otherwise I will not be able to spread the imprint of my soul. Osiris, Bear, Nietzsche, and the others cannot do it. I will only choose you. Stood up and said, I have a discovery to tell you, maybe you already know it, but as a bystander, I should see it more clearly. Let's talk in the temple I built for you. A man and a cat left the house and walked through the manor to the backyard. Os Manor was really too big. The so-called backyard was a garden where horses could gallop freely. In the place with the best scenery, the cat goddess Bastet's temple was built. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, they walked very slowly, their shadows gradually lengthening. When they stepped into the temple, the last ray of the setting sun disappeared over the top of Mount Horeb in the distance. With his hands behind his back, he stood in the center of the shrine, gazing at the statue of Batet on the altar. The statue of this goddess was a cat's head with long hair draped over it like a lion's mane. Under the head was a young woman's body, looking very charming. Schrödinger was a little embarrassed when he saw how engrossed he was and asked, who are you looking at? What are you thinking about? Replied, I'm thinking about the endless test. It's like an endless river that eventually flows back to its source. It's like experiencing and witnessing the course of many lives, seeing it so clearly but unable to think about it. In the end, I can't tell if it's forgotten or cut it off. I've witnessed it in your spiritual imprint, and I've been thinking about it for the past few days. It may be the course of countless lives in the world, or it may be the many lives of one person, but there's no difference in the meaning of the two. After passing this test, you are yourself, with an endless source of power. Now you are still you, not another life in the world, nor are you the endless course of previous lives, you are still the goddess Batet. Your achievements are guided by the divine system, and you should still follow the oath you made. You don't want to be Batet, but in fact you are Batet. This is the source of Osiris's ability to seal your soul. The way to break the shackles is also very simple, that is to cut off all of this. Only when you no longer exist will Batet be truly free. The cat raised her head and also looked at the statue and murmured, I don't exist. Then where will I go? A little afraid to look back at her, Jing sighed softly. Your achievements far exceed mine. If even you don't know, how can I know the answer? The cat shook her head stubbornly. No, I must ask you to give me an answer, even if it's just a guess, I want you to say it yourself. In fact, Jing had already thought of this answer, but he was unwilling to say it. Schrödinger, however, insisted on asking, and he had to say, if the seal that imprisons your soul is broken, I don't know where you will go, but I know where you will be. Perhaps in the future, you will be in the endless verification of another life. But at that time, you will no longer be the Batet of today, and perhaps you will be able to verify it, or perhaps you will never have the chance to reach that step. Batet closed her eyes in the darkness. I understand. In fact, I should have understood it long ago, but I still refuse to give up. Jing finally turned around and looked at Schrödinger. Today you should be able to do it, you just need an external force to break the seal that imprisons your soul. I am this external force, and spreading your spiritual imprint on me is the process. Thank you for telling me all the secrets of your hundreds of years of achievements. The cat still did not open her eyes. Yes, I can finally let go of this shackle, but when the time comes, I can't bear to part with it. Asked gently, what are you still reluctant to part with? Do you want to continue being the most painful cat in the world? Schrödinger finally opened her eyes, and unexpectedly, they were filled with tears. I can't bear to part with you. Didn't know what to say. Of course, he couldn't bear to part with this cat either. Since the day he left his hometown, Schrödinger had always been accompanying and guiding him. Couldn't even imagine what would happen if he didn't have Schrödinger. But in the end, he hardened his heart and said, I am also one of your experiences as Batet. True separation includes not only the facts that you are unwilling to face, but also the things that you love. All of this is woven together to form the seal that imprisons your soul. True separation is also the separation of a whole body. Isn't this very difficult? When you can touch the seal that imprisons your soul, you have another kind of reluctance. Schrödinger used a pitiful tone and said, can you tell me, will you still recognize me? Crouched down to touch her, but his hand didn't reach out. He just lowered his head and said, perhaps you don't even know who you are, perhaps you have another origin, perhaps we have met before, perhaps we will meet again. This life's spiritual imprint has been opened to me, and I can leave another imprint on your soul. In the future, I will recognize you, and you will also recognize me. With my achievements, I can't do this, but the situation between us is very special, and I can do it to you. Hearing this, Schrödinger closed her eyes again. Tears rolled down from the corner of the cat's eyes. The goddess finally understood the wishes of this life. Suddenly felt that something was wrong behind him. The statue on the altar seemed to have come to life. He hurriedly stood up and turned to look, but heard someone say behind him, are you looking at me? It was really the voice of a woman, not coming from the soul. He turned around again and saw her. The cat named Schrödinger finally turned into a woman. It had the same body as the statue on the altar, but it didn't have the head of a cat with a lion's mane. Instead, it was a pretty woman. The tip of her nose was slightly raised, and her pink mouth was very cute. Stepped forward and said, I finally see you. You have broken free from the seal that imprisons your soul. Schrödinger gently shook his head, no, this is not a true break, but a farewell before I leave. I have restored Bastet's power, but as long as I use this power, I will leave. Maybe you don't have to leave in such a hurry. Schrödinger, there are some things you still don't understand. I can use the power of the goddess Batet to help you fulfill your last wish, which also means that I will disappear from this world. But I don't want you to see that scene, so I will leave before sunrise. Looked at the starlight sprinkled on the doorsill of the temple, and opened his arms to Schrödinger. At least for now, there is no sunrise yet. Before sunrise the next day, Schrödinger quietly left. Sat alone in the temple for 3 days. For the first time in his life, the cat was not by his side. He did not know how Schrödinger would say goodbye to this world, but he knew that Schrödinger did not want him to see that scene. Who had never been depressed no matter what difficulties he faced, felt a deep sense of loss and powerlessness at this moment. Schrödinger's separation was also his separation. There were still many things waiting for him in the distance, but he was not interested in them. He just wanted to sit quietly in the temple alone, as if he had spent hundreds of years. 3 days later, finally walked out of the temple. He sent a servant to report to the city of Heliopolis. The messenger from Siberia had come, and he was going to participate in the duel that had been arranged for a long time, and entrusted the city of Heliopolis to convey the news to the capital. Was just informing, not applying, because this duel was witnessed by the monarchs of the 2 countries, and there was no need to ask for the opinion of anyone, including Pharaoh of Merneptah. If he did not go, he would be ridiculed by the world. After the servant set off, also set off. He did not take any attendants with him, but drove a milk boat across the Nile River alone. When he reached the other side, he did not tie the boat, but let the boat drift along the river. Without Schrödinger, without a leather bag, and without an iron staff, walked with his hands in his hands. He hid the rib of Osiris close to his body, and all the important things were in the rib. Didn't try to hide, he just walked along the official road openly. When he arrived at the city of Heliopolis, the governor and the local garrison were alarmed. The lords hurriedly received the supreme general of the empire and asked him why he came alone. Answered frankly at the banquet that he was going to participate in the duel that was known to the world, and took out the letter sent by the messenger from Siberia. So that was how it was. The supreme general's bearing impressed everyone present, and he went alone to such a faraway place to keep the appointment. When set off from the city of Heliopolis, the governor sent carriages and guards to escort him. The news spread quickly, and when passed through various cities, he was received with great ceremony along the way, like a welcoming ceremony. When arrived in the Cape States, the welcome reached the most enthusiastic high. Lord Rod Dick, the governor of Cape, personally went to the border of the territory to wait for him. The generals of the NRA Legion lined up to welcome the Supreme General, and they welcomed to the Cape States. Rod Dick was the current commander of the NRA Legion, but his prestige could not be compared to the former commander of the Legion, Most of the generals here were old subordinates who had followed through fire and water, and they respected like a god. Except for the reception along the way, did not specifically bid farewell to anyone, nor did he contact anyone. He even refrained from going to Montefiore to see Maria, because if he did not return, his actions might bring trouble to the people involved. Because of the new pharaoh's monotheistic reform, many things in the empire of Igut were very sensitive. Rod Dick accompanied all the way across the Red Sea, and expressed his desire to accompany to the duel and be a witness. But firmly refused this request, and he did not want to involve the governor. The landscape of the Cape States had changed greatly. The original Kenmet defense line had been submerged by the Red Sea, forming a natural barrier, leaving only a narrow passage at the southernmost end, where the NRA Legion was heavily garrisoned. When passed by this place, he realized that it was impossible for Moses and the others to walk out of the divine realm of the Ennead by land, because there was only one narrow passage here, and it was a heavily guarded pass. If the fugitive slaves wanted to leave, they could only try to cross the Red Sea in the north. The passage at the southern end of the Red Sea had now become an important town, not only a military fortress, but also the throat of the trade route. It was bustling with people coming and going, and the arrival of General was the biggest event in the town, attracting everyone's attention. Just as arrived at the southern shore of the Red Sea, Moses and the Dushians had also gone through many hardships to reach the shore of the Red Sea 100 miles away. Starting from the outskirts of the city of Heliopolis, passing through the city-state territories of Bubas, Tanis, and Cape, Moses and the others walked for half a year. Walking through the deep mountains and valleys, without carriages or livestock, the journey was particularly difficult. The messengers sent by Seth obstructed their footsteps in various ways, and they encountered terrible storms and huge hailstones falling from the sky on the way. The overwhelming locusts had eaten up all the leaves in the mountains and fields they passed, and the animals had fled far away, leaving them without food supplies. Moses, armed with an iron staff, overcame many dangers with the help of the 12 judges, while Medanzo and Link also secretly used various means to deal with Seth's messengers. When the ragged clansmen finally reached the shore of the Red Sea, they could no longer continue to walk. Link guided Moses to lead the clansmen to harvest wood and quietly build boats in the valley by the sea, intending to take advantage of the calm night to cross the sea and escape. But for many days in a row, the wind on the Red Sea was strong, and they could not cross it, so they could only wait in the valley. Medanzo and Link could do nothing but worry. They had secretly made several moves, and had made an agreement with Seth's messengers that no one could directly intervene. But the boats had been built, and the wind on the Red Sea could not stop forever, and the messengers sent by Seth did not make Moses and the others give up their faith. If Moses crossed the Red Sea, he would leave the divine realm of the Ennead. But at this moment, something that had been worried about for a long time finally happened. When Ah passed through the southernmost land passage of the Red Sea, Rod Dick rushed back to the main city of Cape due to an urgent matter, because there was a distinguished guest in the city, Prince Sneck of the Empire of Igut. This prince was the eldest son of the former pharaoh Lazith II, and the elder brother of the current pharaoh Merneptah. Sneck had come to the Cape States on an important mission, carrying an order personally written by His Majesty Pharaoh, and Rod Dick cooperated to the best of his ability. As for what this mission was, Rod Dick had no right to ask. In fact, Prince Sneck did not have a good relationship with Pharaoh Merneptah. As the eldest son of Lazith II, he was not able to inherit the throne, and he also had his own faction in the country and a vast territory, so he was not obedient to Merneptah. But this time, Merneptah had ordered Prince Sneck to come to the Cape States in the name of an oracle. This oracle was issued directly by the archangel Seth to the priests of the main shrine of the empire, ordering Pharaoh to prevent the supreme general Ah from leaving the territory of Igut. As for how to stop him, it was up to Sneck to figure it out himself, and if that was not possible, he could catch up with Ah and read the oracle in person. But before that, it was not good to make it public, and it was best to use gentle means to persuade the supreme general to come back. As soon as Ah left, Prince Sneck rushed to the main city of Cape, and when he heard that the Supreme General had left, he immediately sent mages to go after him in a flying shuttle, saying that there was something important to discuss, and that the Supreme General Ah and Governor Drick should hurry back to the main city on horseback. Rod Dick returned immediately upon receiving the order, but Ah did not go to see Prince Sneck. He asked Rod Dick to pass on a message. "Once I set foot on this path, I will not look back, and this duel will be witnessed by Pharaoh. It concerns the honor and promise of a warrior, and it cannot be repented. Your Highness, whatever it is, we will talk about it later." Rod Dick could not do anything about Ah, unless he let the garrison of the Nra Legion take Ah back to the city, but how could Rod Dick dare to give such an order? Besides, Prince Sneck did not say what the specifics were, so Rod Dick had to go back and tell the prince himself that the Supreme General refused to see him and had already continued on his way. When Sneck heard Rod Dick's report, he realized that things were not going well, and it seemed that the Supreme General wanted to leave Igut. Because before this, Ah had already sent away all his trusted aides, and the clansmen who had become slaves had long since fled. So it seemed that it was really necessary to force him to stay. Prince Sneck intended to set out with his army immediately at dawn the next day to catch up with Ah. That night, the priests in the shrine of Cape were again guided by the archangel's oracle. The fugitive slaves that Pharaoh had ordered to be wanted throughout the country were finally found. They were in a valley on the Red Sea, quietly building boats to cross the sea. Chapter 180. 164. Batet divides the Red Sea. When Prince Sneck received the news, he immediately sent an army to capture Moses and the other Duk miners. His orders were very strict: if they could not be captured alive, they could be killed. In order to ensure that his orders could be carried out thoroughly, Prince Sneck not only sent the garrison troops of the Cape States, but also a group of elite guards that he had personally brought with him. Prince Sneck came with his guards. Not only were there warriors, but there were also more than a dozen mages, a total of 300 people, far more than the normal number of personal guards of a prince. Rod Dick was not stupid, and when he saw that Prince Sneck had brought so many people, he understood something in his heart, but he could not stop it from happening. Sneck sent out 100 of the 300 guards he had brought with him, led by the captain of his personal guard, and had Rod Dick mobilize 200 garrison troops of the city, as well as a group of priests from the shrine. At dawn, they set off for the Red Sea coast to capture Moses. He himself led 200 guards, accompanied by Rod Dick, and headed east in pursuit of King Abdullah. When Sneck arrived at the fortified town at the southern end of the Red Sea, King Abdullah had already left for the border of Cape. Sneck mobilized another 800 cavalry and charioteers stationed here, and together with the original guards, there were 1,000 men, and they set off at full speed in pursuit of King Abdullah. As soon as these two groups set off, Madanzo and Link quickly realized that Moses and the others had gone berserk, because a group of cavalry was heading straight for the Red Sea coast along the nearest road, and their target was the valley where Moses and the others were hiding. Link asked Madanzo, "What do we do?" "Let them escape," or forcibly cross the sea? Madanzo shook his head and said, "They can't escape, their whereabouts have been exposed. How can Moses and the others outrun the cavalry? If we forcibly cross the sea, the winds will not subside, and the two of us will cast spells to ward off Fensitha's emissaries. The winds will still rise, and Moses and the others are likely to die in the sea. Since we are already in a desperate situation, we might as well pick up weapons and fight. Link, the other side has 300 regular soldiers. Moses and the others are no match for them." Madanzo said, "The miners of Duk are not weak. Of course, it is impossible for all of them to escape, but it is still possible for a dozen of them to snatch the horses and run away. Now that things have come to this, it's better to save as many people as possible. It's better than being completely wiped out." The two of them discussed for a long time, but couldn't come up with a better idea. They could only inform Moses to prepare for battle. Moses and his clansmen were eating in the valley. Beside them were 3 wooden boats that had been built. There was no wind around them, but the scarlet sea in the distance kept churning. They could only continue to wait. Suddenly, he heard the voice of the oracle, "Moses, there is a group of 300 cavalrymen coming here. You have to inform your people to prepare for battle. Muster up your courage and fight with all your might. Seize their horses and escape to the north. I will guide you to the escape route." Moses was taken aback. He secretly asked, "Messenger of God, are we finally going to fight Igut's army?" Link asked, "Why, are you afraid?" Moses shook his head and said, "No, I am eager for this battle. Even if I have to give up my life, I will not hesitate. The journey of searching for a home is the pursuit of life. Whether it succeeds or not, I will work hard for it. The staff that God gave me is not just for traveling." Link said with relief, "Very good. God was right. Don't panic. Let your clansmen have a good meal. The pursuers will not arrive until the afternoon. Since battle is inevitable, let's wait for them to tire themselves out." Link told Moses to prepare for battle, but he and Madanzo knew very well that they would not be able to save their clansmen in this battle. It would be lucky if only a few of them could escape. He said to Madanzo, "I'm afraid we will not be able to complete the task that Almighty has given us." Madanzo sighed and slowly took out the key of fate. That is what they have to face. Igut's frog goddess Hecate, snake god Ejo and crocodile god Sobek have been secretly watching us. If they are allowed to enter the battlefield, none of the Dushans will be able to escape. Link also sighed, "If they appear on the battlefield, we will also rush in and fight. We will use the shuttle to take Moses and David away. This is the worst-case scenario." Moses waited for his clansmen to finish their lunch before he stood up and shouted, "Clansmen, we have gone through untold hardships to reach the shores of the Red Sea, and are about to break free from our cage. But our whereabouts have finally been exposed. The messenger of the evil god Igut has sent an army to hunt us down. A cavalry of 300 men is rushing here. Please take up your weapons and prepare for battle. Use battle to free our bodies and souls. May God be with you and me." The clansmen panicked. Someone shouted in fear, "Are we going to fight against the army of Igut? Didn't God say that he would guide us away? Why would he let the army catch up?" Joshua said to the crowd, "The path that God guides us is also our own wish, but God did not say that there are no thorns on this path. If we do not have the courage to fight, why should we pray for God's protection? Thank God for giving us food, strength, confidence and hope, so that we can take up arms against our enemies. Although I am not as strong as the judges, I will fight without hesitation." The miners picked up their hammers, machetes, hoes and other weapons, and waited in the valley for the arrival of Igut's cavalry. Some people's hearts were firm, some were restless, and some were praying in panic. Time seemed to drag on. The sunlight shining on the valley became hotter and hotter. Many people were sweating without realizing it. Moses stood on a high vantage point, looking at the two sides. His eyes were resolute, but there was also a hint of helplessness. A few dozen miners against 300 elite cavalrymen of the empire. It was impossible for them to win. They could only snatch the horses and let some of the miners escape. At this moment, an almost irresistible pressure suddenly permeated the valley. Caught off guard, some of the miners fell to their knees. They did not know what was happening. They stared at the sky with wide eyes. A majestic voice rang in their minds at the same time, "Slaves of Duk, listen carefully. I am the Archangel Seth. The merciful God has mercy on the lowly lives. You have disobeyed the orders of Pharaoh. God has given you sufficient punishment along the way. Now that the army of the empire is chasing you, you have nowhere to run. I can let you go and give you freedom, but it must be in my way." Seth was speaking like a real god. The powerful force permeated between heaven and earth. Medanzo and Link, who were hiding in the distance, could not get close. Someone shouted to the sky, "God of Igut, what will it take for you to let us go back to our homeland and end all this?" Seth replied in a low voice, "It's very simple, as long as you make an oath and promise one thing, build a shrine for me after returning to the Duk Plain, and sincerely offer sacrifices and prayers to me, you will be able to leave Egypt safely and return to your homeland. Kneel down and make a covenant with me. Swear to me, and the pursuers will retreat. The wind on the Red Sea will calm down." Some people had already knelt down, and some were trembling under the powerful pressure. Moses stood as straight as he could with his staff in his hand. He replied to the sky in a clear voice, "I refuse the false god who once enslaved and tortured us. What right do you have to enjoy our sincere sacrifices? We have our God, the only God, with the light that shines on our souls." Seth sneered, "Moses, do you know what you have refused? Your God, Murin or Siswi? Sooner or later, you will find out who the real powerful God is. When one day you feel lonely and afraid, set up an idol and pray to me. Call my name Seth. If I can punish you, I can let you go." "Moses, do you think everyone here is as stubborn as you?" Along with the sneer, the pressure that filled the air disappeared. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat, feeling as if they couldn't even breathe properly. The people looked at each other, thinking about what Seth had just said. Someone whispered, "Actually, it's not bad to agree to God Seth's conditions. It's fine as long as we return home safely. If we refuse him, it means that we will be slaughtered by the army." Moses raised his staff to the sky with a sullen face and said, "My people, I have heard your whispers. The life of a person will eventually come to an end. In the face of death, ask yourself, what is the purpose of walking this path? That evil false god is shaking our faith and trying to make us lose the will to fight. Don't let him succeed, hold your weapons and prepare for battle. Yesterday's sweat and today's blood must not be shed in vain." Medanzo and Link, who were hiding in the mountains in the distance, whispered, "What a terrible power, it's Seth himself. These people of Duk are very important." A few dozen escaped slaves actually alarmed the Archangel of Igut. Link praised, "Moses is really brave, worthy of being the disciple of Almighty." At this moment, the two suddenly heard a voice, "Link, Medanzo, fly to the air and guard both sides of the coastline. Don't let Heket and the others attack. I will guide Moses and the others across the Red Sea." The two were startled and hurriedly turned around. It was unknown when a young woman holding a scepter appeared in the valley. She had long golden brown hair, a pretty face, but her eyes flashed with a beast-like sharpness. Metatro stared blankly for a moment, then exclaimed, "May I ask who you are?" The young woman replied, "We have met many times. You have called me the messenger of the gods, and you have also called me Lord." Link saw the short scepter in her hand and suddenly reacted, "You are Batet, there is a statue of you in Almighty's manor. I know what this short scepter looks like." Medanzo reacted even faster and immediately prostrated, "Lord Schrödinger, you are not sent by the Ennead. You have always been the companion of Almighty, right?" Batet smiled, "Call me whatever you want, just do as I say." Moses was anxiously waiting for the cruel fate to come. He knew that he would not win, but he vowed to fight to the end and try to cover as many of his people as possible to escape. This was the power given to him by Allah and the scepter. At this moment, he heard the voice of another young woman, "People of Duk, I am the messenger of Allah. I have been watching you in silence, from the moment you came to this world. You arrived at the Red Sea under the guidance of the gods. After escaping slavery, you have to overcome many hardships. This is the suffering of the human world, and only through it can you have the happiness you seek. Don't be afraid, don't hesitate, go to the sea, I will open a path for you." The voice seemed to have a strange magic power. Everyone heard it, and the emotions of panic and uneasiness seemed to be wiped away invisibly. People looked around with wide eyes, but did not see the speaker. The young woman's voice sounded in Moses's mind again, "Why are you standing still? What are you hesitating for? Quickly lead the people to the sea, the pursuers will be here soon, the iron hooves are beating the ground, the valley is already trembling." Moses replied in his soul, "The messenger of the gods has told me to prepare for battle. If you are really the messenger of Allah, then you have been watching me since the moment I was born. Please prove it." The young woman replied, "Your father once said to you, the body is the courtyard where the soul resides, and the place where the soul stands is the home of the body and mind. If the body and mind lose their support, you do not know where the soul is, do not know what you are pursuing, then you are truly homeless. Do you remember when you made a mistake and were locked upstairs without eating dinner?" Moses was startled, and no longer had any doubts in his heart. He walked down the slope, raised his scepter and said, "People, please follow me, our God will guide us across the Red Sea." Joshua asked, "Moses, our leader, how does the God want us to cross the Red Sea? There are huge waves rolling over there, and it is too late for us to carry the boat to the shore." Moses strode out of the valley and said, "The God wants us to cross like this." Everyone followed Moses to the seaside. The wind was not strong, but the waves were several people tall. Looking at it, it looked like huge white flowers surging on the surface of the sea. The young woman's voice quietly sounded again, "Moses, point your scepter to the other side." Moses raised his scepter and pointed to the other side of the Red Sea. An incredible miracle happened. The sea surged to the left and right, and the seawater strangely parted to reveal wet reefs and shells, revealing a path across the Red Sea. This was a soul-stirring miracle. The sea was rolling on both sides, as if it would rush over at any time and smash everything to pieces. Moses witnessed this miracle and strode forward, his iron scepter steadily pointing forward. The judges shouted to the clansmen who were still in a daze on the shore, "Hurry up and rush over as fast as you can." Medanzo and Link floated in the air along this path, one on the left and the other on the right. They were stunned and exclaimed, "Is this the power of the goddess Batet?" Link said, "We'll follow Moses and the others. We'll help the goddess and prevent those three from playing any tricks." An angry voice came from the sky, "Batet, what are you doing? Are you going to betray the Ennead?" Batet replied lightly, "Seth, please call me Lord Schrödinger, I am just parting the Red Sea." Seth's voice was a little angry, "As a member of the Ennead, you can open the boundaries of the realm of the gods. But you should know what this means. I don't know when you regain such great power, but are you confident that you are a match for me?" Batet sneered, "Archangel Seth, you became the main god of the Ennead in the name of Ra, of course I am not a match for you. But I don't have to worry about being defeated by you, this is my last power and my farewell ceremony, you can't stop it." As the passage in the sea extended forward, Bastet's figure above the clouds became fainter and fainter, as if becoming transparent and slowly disappearing. Seth shouted in amazement, "Is this how you break the shackles of the soul? You actually helped that man named Ah like this, I will not let you succeed." Bastet's figure gradually disappeared, and his last voice floated in the air, "Right? Why don't you try it? He did not challenge you, and even if you want to violate the agreement of the gods and attack a mortal, don't forget who has Tiamat's wrath." Ah walked on the official road, his steps firm, neither fast nor slow, with the majesty of the supreme general of the empire, and even if he was alone, it was as if he was commanding thousands of troops. He had left the divine realm of the Ennead, but he was still in the territory of the Cape States of the Empire of Igut, and did not go far in a hurry. Because he only left here to participate in a duel, and it was clear that Moses and the others were still in the territory of Igut, if there were any changes, he himself could attract more attention. That afternoon, who was walking suddenly stopped and turned around. From far away in the northwest came a powerful fluctuation of magic power, causing even to feel a deep shock. Could it be that the gods had made a move, and Moses and the others were in trouble? Had the experience of Schrödinger's spiritual imprint, and the gods would not directly do something, and there were some special agreements between the gods, so who was doing what at this moment? Wanted to rush over to see, but he stood there and did not move, because he still had his own troubles. A thunderous sound came from the west, and the earth trembled slightly. Was very familiar with this sound. It was the cavalry and chariots galloping in formation, and they were rushing towards his position. He did not take out his weapon, and stood with his hands behind his back, waiting quietly. A moment later, a military formation in bright armor appeared on the horizon, and the chariots and cavalry still maintained a neat formation even as they advanced at high speed. About 100 paces away from a horn blew out a series of short sounds, and the chariots and horses slowed down and stopped steadily at the same time, obviously well-trained troops. These people were of course elites, and apart from the 200 guards of Prince Sneak, the other 800 soldiers were personally trained by The military formation stopped, and Rod Dick shouted, "Supreme General, please wait." Asked in return, "I'm already standing here, Lord Dick, who are you going to fight with so many troops?" Rod Dick braced himself and shouted, "We are here to invite the Supreme General back. Prince Sneak sent someone to invite you to discuss important matters, but you refused to see him, so His Highness the Prince came in person. To invite the Supreme General back in such a grand manner is the supreme glory of the Empire." Chapter 181. 165, Shah killed Pharaoh's eldest son Prince Snek, who was sitting in the carriage, finally spoke. "Shah, Pharaoh ordered me to bring you back." Shah's voice was not loud, but it could be heard clearly by the more than 1,000 people on the opposite side. "Your Highness Prince Snek? It must have been hard on you to bring so many people and travel so far for me. Now that you've seen me, please tell Merneptah that Supreme General Shah has resigned." Prince Snek shouted angrily, "The reward of the Empire, the glory bestowed upon you by the gods, do you think you can give it up just because you want to? Are you going to give up your territory, your title? Even if you resign from your post as Supreme General of the Empire, you still have to obey the orders of the Empire." Shah sighed softly and replied, "Snek, I don't think you understand one thing. I have done enough for the Empire of Igut, and it can only be said that your father, Lazith II Pharaoh, owes me, and I don't owe you anything. What orders Merneptah gave you has nothing to do with me." Prince Snek's face was very ugly. "Supreme General Shah, do you know the consequences of speaking like this? No matter what, you have to come back with me, and I also want to tell you that your fugitive slaves, the Dushans, have been found, and they are trapped on the Red Coast. I sent cavalry to capture them this morning, and if they can't be captured alive, they will be executed on the spot. If you are willing to go back with me now, I can send someone to take back the order. Otherwise, you and your people will suffer the same fate." Shah's face did not change, but his pupils were contracting. He calculated in his heart that if the cavalry had set off from Cape States to the Red Coast in the morning, as long as they knew where Moses and the others were hiding, they would have caught up by now, and it would be too late for Prince Snek to send someone to take back the order. All that had been said just now was nonsense, and he hoped that Madanzo and Link could guide Moses away in time. Snek saw that Shah was silent and thought that his threat had worked, so he softened his tone a little and said, "Supreme General, I don't want to make things difficult for you. As long as you are willing to go back with me, everything can be discussed. You have made immortal contributions to the Empire, and no matter what mistakes you have made, they are forgivable." Took a step forward and said, "Snake, did you really give that order?" Although he was 100 paces away, Snek's heart still raced under his stare, but he could not lose the dignity of an imperial prince, so he swallowed and nodded. "Yes, if the Supreme General is willing to turn back, I will immediately rescind the order and send someone to chase after the cavalry." Those people are your slaves. You can personally order for them to be captured. Took another step forward and asked, if I refuse your request, will you give the same order? Snek's forehead beaded with sweat involuntarily, and he shouted in a deep voice, don't you dare lie to me. Slowly walked with his hands clasped behind his back, his voice echoing across the wilderness. What right do you have for me to control you? I'm not from Igut. Back then, I traveled thousands of miles to Igut in order to return the belongings of the chief priest of the Cape Shrine, Nero. I received a gift from Nero when he was still alive. Because of this gift, I was hunted down by bandits of noble status and almost died on the banks of the Nile River. It was the Holy Maiden and the Supreme Warrior Gabriel who passed by and saved me, making me an honorable warrior. Because I was a miner in the town of Duk, I once offered the gods tear that I mined to the goddess Isis. I intercepted the assassins at the blessing ceremony, and as a reward, I had the opportunity to go to Mount Horeb. This was my greatest gain from coming to Igut. I found my own people. I diligently studied the art of war, trained hard in martial arts, and went deep into the wilderness to investigate. After becoming a supreme warrior, I passed the assessment and was appointed as the head of the Inare Legion. It was I who formed and trained this legion and made countless contributions on the battlefield. I went deep into the enemy's rear and captured King Hittite alive, saved the Igut army from destruction, facilitated the peace talks between the two countries, and saved the lives of countless people. When the army returned home, the Uruk Legion attacked, and in the face of danger, I was ordered to command thousands of troops and repelled the most powerful enemy on the continent. The glory I received was deserved, not a gift from Lazith II. I don't care about titles, I only have one wish, and that is to be able to return my people to their homeland. I have done so much, but your father Lazith II still refused this request, so they became my slaves. I have a territory in the plains of Duk, and I ordered my slaves to reclaim it. This is not against any law, but the reality is that they have to flee. It was I who acquiesced in their escape, and it was they who were willing to flee. Let me tell you, this is not a secret, and His Highness Prince Snek should be aware of it. Now I am going to a faraway place to participate in a duel, and the reason for this duel is that I once captured King Hittite alive, and I captured King Hittite alive to save the Igut army and your father His Majesty Lazith II. You are just an ordinary stranger to me, but you are leading an army that I have trained myself, preventing me from fulfilling my promise, ordering the killing of my people, and threatening to give me the same fate. If you were me, what would you do at this moment? Do you laughably think that I would be afraid of death, and that a person who is afraid of death would capture King Hittite alone? As he spoke, I had already walked about 70 paces away from the army formation, and his expression became more and more gloomy. Prince Snek suddenly felt a trace of danger, and shouted hoarsely, stop. Ignored him and continued to walk forward slowly, saying as he walked, you were the one who wanted me to come back, and I am walking back now, so why do you want me to stop? Prince Snek shouted, the lives of your people are still in my hands, don't act rashly. Sneered and said, that is the fate they will face, I have my own choice and will bear the consequences of it. Snek, are you afraid? Have you already seen your own end? Snek raised his arm and said, why would I be afraid of you? I am the prince of the Empire of Igut, you shall not be rude. In the army formation, the commander-in-chief making such a gesture was a command. The archers knocked their arrows, and the cavalry also raised their spears, twisted their waists, and spread their arms back. Sighed, it's a pity that Lazith II is already dead. You wanted me to come back, well, I'm coming back. As he spoke, he was only about 50 paces away, and for a supreme warrior, he could launch a fatal blow at any time. Snek couldn't believe that would take the initiative to attack. He had never been on the battlefield, nor had he seen a person like Enkidu, but advancing step by step also made him panic, and he shouted, please kneel down and be bound, don't come over. Go back, or I will order an attack. Sneered. Kneel down and be bound, why should I? Aren't you here to ask me to go back? What right do you have to order an attack? Snek, do you dare to make a bet? A bet on what will happen to you. Ah's voice carried a strange power that attacked the soul, and Sneck's ears buzzed, his mind filled with a feeling of being torn apart. Seeing Ah's murderous aura rising with every step, he finally couldn't help but raise his arm and wave it forward. Attack, this is God. He wanted to say that this was an order from the oracle, but Ah didn't give him a chance to continue speaking. Only a few dozen paces away, Sneck's arm fell, and Ah's slow figure suddenly turned into a shadow and pounced straight over. Without a weapon, he threw a punch with his bare hand. Arrows and spears rained down, and Sneck set up a battle formation with his own guards in the middle, and the chariots and cavalry of the Inare Legion lined up on both sides. The arrows and spears of the Inare Legion soldiers were all empty, and they passed behind Ah and landed in the open. Ah's speed was too fast, and by the time the soldiers attacked, he was no longer where he was. In fact, even if he wasn't fast, those arrows wouldn't have hit him. The soldiers of the Inare Legion were unwilling to attack Ah, but they were under orders to complete the mission. Trained soldiers knew that when attacking a moving target from the side with a projectile weapon, one must consider the flight time of the weapon and the speed of the opponent's advance, and one must not aim directly. But these soldiers deliberately attacked behind Ah. Anyway, everyone was attacking together, and no one would care who missed. But the personal guards around Sneck would not show mercy, and arrows and spears flew head-on towards Ah. Ah waved his fist, and the air in front of him erupted with a faint silver light. A storm-like force shot out, and the arrows and spears were all swept away. The guards felt the surging pressure whistling in their eardrums, and for a moment they couldn't even hear anything. Ah's punch sent several knights in front of Sneck's chariot flying along with his horse. Several mages around Sneck had just raised their staffs, and a colorful shield rose in front of the chariot, among which there was a transparent air elemental armor, and a fire dragon shot out to meet Ah's incoming figure. The prince was accompanied by several mages, one of whom was a supreme mage. The methods of these people were brilliant, and if they had launched a joint attack from the beginning, even if they couldn't take Ah down, they might not have given him a chance to get close. But now the time to react was too short, and they could only do so in a hurry. Ah Dan punched out with explosive energy and surging silver light, sweeping away the arrows and javelins flying towards him. He scattered the fire dragons that were flying out, and with a series of explosive sounds, he shattered the layers of barriers. In the end, there was only a muffled bang, and the air elemental armor that the supreme mage had blessed Prince Sneck was forcibly shattered. Ah's fist did not directly hit Sneck, and he was sent flying backward by the powerful impact. Just as Ah's right hand shattered the air elemental armor, his left hand also threw a punch, meeting a sword thrust from his side. Rod Dick was sitting in the same chariot as Sneck. The governor was also a 6th-level warrior, and when he saw Ah get in the chariot, he gritted his teeth and drew his sword. Ah punched back without even looking. His fist was covered with a thin film of silver light, like an invisible glove, and it shattered Rod Dick's sword from the tip all the way to the edge. The governor flew out and was caught by a mage before he hit the ground. From the moment Sneck gave the order to attack to the sound of a bang on the chariot, it was only the blink of an eye, and then two figures flew out one after the other, Ah and Rod Dick. Prince Sneck sat motionless in the chariot, leaning against the back of the chair and tongue-tied, like a stone statue frozen in fear. Rod Dick was caught, and he fainted as soon as his eyes closed. Several accompanying mages hurriedly cast healing magic, but they did not wake the head of the legion up for a long time. It seemed that he was badly injured. The center of the army formation was in a mess. Without the head of the legion's orders, the soldiers of the Inare Legion did not act rashly, and Sneck's personal guards were, of course, most concerned about the safety of His Highness. Snake was completely unscathed, and Ah's fist only hit 3 feet in front of him, breaking his air elemental armor, and then flew back after a sword fight with Rod Dick. His Royal Highness the Prince was probably scared out of his wits. The captain of the guards and the accompanying court supreme mage jumped into the chariot, and the guards surged to the front of the chariot like a flood, raising their shields high, and the magical formation was activated to guard the area tightly, protecting the safety of His Highness. The captain of the guards gently patted Sneck on the cheek. "Your Highness, are you all right?" The court supreme mage's face immediately changed, and he said, "Don't touch His Highness, healing magic, quick, first aid." He raised his staff high and chanted, and the mages around him also cast their spells, and countless soft rays of light fell on His Highness. But Sneck still sat there without any reaction, staring straight ahead, his pupils gradually dilating. With his eyes closed, Rod Dick heard the anxious voice of the mage, "Lord Head of the Legion, please wake up, His Highness is dead." In fact, Rod Dick did not faint at all. Na's punch had caused his chi and blood to tumble, but there seemed to be a tacit understanding between the two of them. Rod Dick was sent flying with a somersault, but he only suffered a slight shock. Rod Dick was caught, and he closed his eyes, and no matter how the mage treated him, he insisted on being unconscious. Ah's punch had saved him, and as the head of the NRA Legion, he was sitting next to Prince Sneck with more than 1,000 troops. If Ah had killed the prince in person, and he, the head of the Legion, was unharmed and had not been caught, would definitely have been severely punished. This was the best outcome, with His Highness the Prince dead on the spot, and Rod Dick seriously injured and unable to get up. At least he was loyal to his duty. At that time on the chariot, he had no choice but to stab Sneck with his sword, and he could only pray in his heart that Ah would be gentler, but not too gentle. Rod Dick saw Ah's punch with his own eyes, and it vaguely had the power of Enkidu back then, and he understood in horror that Sneck was definitely dead. Sneck had never been on the battlefield, and had no experience in commanding battles at all, let alone seen a warrior who could take the head of a commander in an army of 10,000. He probably did not expect this scene before he died. In order to catch up with Sneck, it was impossible to bring infantry, and whether it was cavalry or charioteers, their real power in battle was to charge at full speed, not to put on a show to scare people. Although there were 1,000 soldiers, they could not all be piled in front of him, and Sneck still had to talk to Ah at the very center of the battle formation. If it had been a battle, letting Ah swagger to a distance of 30 paces in front of him would have been no different from courting death. If Ah had been the enemy, Sneck should have set up a military formation in front of him, and then let the mages operate the magic formation to cover the formation, and the cavalry and charioteers on both flanks would have opened their heavy crossbows and stood ready. Unfortunately, Ah was not guilty after all, and Sneck had only come to ask the Supreme General to go back. At first, he did not realize that Ah would dare to kill someone, and take the life of a prince of the empire in the middle of the army. Ah smashed the air elemental armor with a punch, and the impact drilled into Sneck's body and spread out. Sneck's whole body was paralyzed and unable to move, and his heartbeat and breathing stopped in an instant. This was the mining technique of the town of Duk. Ah used his fist to take someone's life through the air, but Sneck looked unscathed. The personal guards were not sure at first that His Highness the Prince was dead, and their first task was to protect the prince and prevent Ah from attacking again. The shield formation and magic formation were immediately set up, and the guards at the back were also blocked. The NRA Legion on both sides did not receive orders and stood still. In fact, even if they wanted to give chase, they could not catch up with Ah. Ah flew backward and landed steadily 100 paces away, then walked away with his hands clasped behind his back. It looked like he was taking slow steps, but his back was blurred for a moment, and he soon disappeared into the horizon at the end of the road, while Snake's personal guards had yet to react. By the time they confirmed that His Highness the Prince was dead, Ah was long gone. The Supreme General killed the prince with one punch, and then just walked away with his hands behind his back. The captain of Sneck's personal guards shouted in grief and indignation, "Go after him, catch him." Ah assassinated His Highness the Prince. Not far away, a general shouted in a low, muffled voice, "Are you in command here? Your duty is only to protect the prince," and more than 1,000 pairs of eyes saw it clearly. The prince asked the Supreme General to come back, and the Supreme General really did come back, but the prince suddenly gave the order to kill the Supreme General, and the Supreme General punched out in self-defense. It was the prince who gave the order to attack first. May I ask if this is called an assassination? Who on earth wants to assassinate who? This general was a cavalry captain who had been with Ammon since the formation of the Inare Legion. After many battles, he was now a general who commanded thousands of cavalry. He did not want to be enemies with Ammon in the first place. What Ah had just said was true, and it made people sigh with emotion. The Supreme General himself also walked back towards Snek, and it was His Highness the Prince who gave the order to attack first. The court's Supreme Mage had given up on saving Snek. The prince was dead, but Commander Drick was still alive, and now only he could give the order, so the court's Supreme Mage came to save Commander Drick. Rod Dick knew that he couldn't pretend anymore, so he had to open his eyes and let out a long breath, and asked in a weak voice, "What's wrong, what happened?" The mages replied, "The Supreme General killed His Highness Prince Snek with one punch, and has left. The soldiers are waiting for your orders." Rod Dick punched himself in the chest, and blood spurted out of his mouth. "How could this happen, Your Highness the Prince? I couldn't save you. Send someone to report what happened here to the Pharaoh, don't miss a single detail. Notify the entire territory of the city and all the passes along the border, take Ah down on the spot when you see him." Chapter 182. Ammon was not in a good mood. Killing Prince Snake of the Empire of Igut with one punch did not give him the satisfaction of showing off. This was just revenge and punishment, the price Snake had to pay for his actions. Chastity slap even Schrödinger was gone, so what else in this world could shake his heart? Could the title and status of the Empire's great general be compared to that cat? That sense of loss had been with him, and since Snake deserved to die, he killed him with one punch. Even if he was facing Elder Igut at that time, Ammon would have done the same. At the moment, Ammon was sitting in a desolate field, which seemed to have suffered from a plague of insects. Many leaves had large insect eyes, but not far away was a green lake, reflecting the blue sky and white clouds, and the scenery was very beautiful. Ammon, however, turned a blind eye to all this, and just sat there stroking a tool in his hand. The object looked like a slender metal embryo, but it was not clear what kind of material it was made of, and in the middle was a transparent crystal, not any kind of parangan. When this crystal was looked at against the light, there would be a thin seam in the middle, like a cat's eye, changing between day and night, but it was not a cat's eye stone of the human world. With Ammon's vision, he could see that this was a holy object, and not something that could be made with ordinary methods. When Ammon grasped the power of the origin, this was the weapon he should be using. It could be used as a staff to activate magic, but it could also be used as a weapon controlled by magic. It had all kinds of magical uses. Ammon could sense that this object had two special powers, one was sealing, and the other was severing. This was what Link had given him, the relic of the cat goddess Bastet. When Moses and the others crossed the Red Sea, Bastet's figure disappeared from the clouds, and the staff in her hand seemed to have melted, flying towards Link, and when Link caught it, it became like this. This was Goddess Bastet's scepter, a weapon she had used to slay demons for hundreds of years. She had tempered it countless times with the power of her soul. It was different from ordinary weapons or staffs, and it could change with the body and mind. When she finally left, she left this tool behind, as if it was the final proof of her existence. Why did it become like this, and what kind of magic it had been bestowed upon it? Perhaps even Bastet himself did not know. It was like the remains of a scepter, but it was also like a brand new artifact that had been refined and purified, but had yet to be forged. After killing Snake, Ammon did not flee the borders of Igut, but instead headed north to the eastern shore of the Red Sea. He found that Moses and the others had safely crossed the sea. Medanzo and Link were still following them in the dark. He appeared and stopped the two disciples to ask them what had happened, and only then did he learn that Schrödinger had used the power of the goddess to help him one last time, and Medanzo and Link had seen her disappear in a smile with their own eyes. Ammon had no words to describe his feelings, and told Medanzo and Link to leave with Moses and the others as soon as possible. Although they were already out of the divine realm of the Ennead, they were still within the borders of Igut. Don't forget to bring enough water and food before you go, as they would be crossing the desert not far from the borders. Medanzo asked, Ammonius, aren't you leaving with us? Aman shook his head and said, "The road ahead is still very difficult and dangerous, so be careful. I have just killed Lazith II's eldest son, Prince Snake of the Empire of Igut, and I will walk straight out of the border checkpoint, so that everyone will know my whereabouts, and Moses and the others will be able to escape from an uninhabited place." The two disciples still wanted to say something, but Aman waved his hand and closed his eyes without saying a word, and they had no choice but to leave. Aman sat there, stroking the short staff left behind by Schrödinger, sensing the strange nature of the object, as if he was gently caressing her. He did not cry, but tears quietly dripped onto the object, and the crystal seemed to have a spiritual luster in the blink of an eye, and Aman's tears were actually absorbed without leaving a trace. Aman had a name called Allah, which meant day and night, just like the transformation of a cat's eye. He sat from day to night, and from night to day, as if he was thinking, in a daze, recalling, and meditating. When the morning light appeared on the horizon, he suddenly stood up with the short staff in his hand, his tears already dried, opened his eyes and shouted back, "You've been sneaking around for so long, if you want to let go, then let go." With that said, he simply waved the short staff, and a strange force sealed all the aura fluctuations in the surroundings. A powerful hidden aura finally revealed itself, and a man wearing armor appeared on the hillside. His cheeks were red, and his helmet had a winged decoration, and his armor reflected a myriad of colors. He was a tall man, but his arms were much longer than the average person, and one could almost touch his leg bones with a stretch of hand. The weapons in his hands looked like two halves of spears. The man was suddenly forced out of hiding by Aman, and was also taken aback. He spread his long arms and said, "I'm just a passerby. If I can stay here in such a large wilderness, then I can also pass by." Aman did not waste time with him, and directly called out his identity, "Insect god Khepri, who sent you? What are you trying to do by following behind my people? Seeing that I stayed here, you stopped and stared at me for a day and a night. Don't forget, this is no longer the divine realm of the Ennead." Khepri was so frightened that he took 2 steps back and stared at him. "How do you know me? Don't call me insect god, I'm the scarab angel. I was ordered by Seth to investigate that group of people and give them guidance at the right time." Aman walked over step by step with the short staff in his hand. "Guidance? Don't think that I don't know what you've done. You've forced me into a desperate situation before threatening me. After leaving the Ennead divine realm, you still haven't abandoned me. You forgot to tell me that I just killed a prince of the Empire of Igut not long ago." Khepri shook his head. "I'm just completing a mission, like a scout in the army. General Aman, I didn't attack. Blaming me is equivalent to blaming Archangel Seth." As Aman moved forward step by step, Khepri retreated step by step. Aman pointed at him with the short staff and said, "Even if I'm not blamed for Seth, so what? Where did all the hardships along the way come from? Do you know what happens to the scouts sent by the army if they reveal themselves? Stand still and don't move, you'll understand soon enough." Khepri shook the short staff in his hand. "Aman, don't mess around, I'm an emissary of the gods." Aman said calmly, "I'm not messing around, I just want to tell you not to follow my people anymore, don't send any more insects. No matter who you are or what your name is, if you don't leave, then please don't ever leave." Khepri's expression was uncertain, and he had already retreated to the top of the mountain. He shouted, "Just an ordinary person, no match for an angel, no match for me." Aman's expression didn't change at all, and there were no fluctuations in his emotions. He said indifferently, "Khepri, I know there are many magical abilities, related to one's origin, some even true gods can't do. But I also know their weakness, their fighting strength isn't strong, if their technique is broken, they will become very cowardly." Aman had already reached the top of the mountain step by step, and raised the short staff unhurriedly. There was a steep slope below, and Khepri stepped backwards in the air and said, "Don't come over, if you dare to let go, I dare." Before he finished speaking, he rolled on the ground and turned into a cloud of dust. There seemed to be countless dots in the dust, flying towards various targets. Aman shouted, "Escape, your method is quite clever. Then he put the short staff on his waist like a sword, turned and walked east with his hands behind his back. Aman knew Igut's insect god Khepri, he had seen him in Schrödinger's soul imprint. This insect god was very courageous, but he was very flexible, good at lurking, and even better at controlling all kinds of insects. Being targeted by him was very difficult to guard against, and it was a headache. Moses and the others had already left the Ennead's divine realm, but Seth still sent such an emissary to follow behind, but it was noticed by Aman in time. A god above the clouds scolded with dissatisfaction, "Useless tool, you haven't made any progress after so many years of cultivation." From a distant place, a woman's voice suddenly came again, "Seth, is this your method? Sending insects to undermine me, isn't it too shameful?" Only the voice could be heard but not the person speaking, so the person should be far away. Seth looked towards the target where the voice came from and said, "Murin? How infatuated, so worried about that lover. Don't worry, once he is out of my divine realm, I will not make things difficult for him anymore, everyone knows what kind of person he is." Murin let out a string of tender laughter. "This place is not the Ennead's divine realm, if you really want to leave, it would be a violation of the agreement of the gods, sending such a sneaky emissary out, and you still don't want to make things difficult for me? Everyone here is a god, don't play with this illusion." Seth said with a straight face, "Don't call me a god, I am Seth the Archangel." Murin stopped laughing, "It's just a change of title, I still have the realm of transcending eternal life, if this is really my belief, I don't mind being called a false god too. I'm just here to warn you not to interfere in the affairs of the plains of Duk, that has nothing to do with me." Seth, however, laughed, "The sheep of Duk have finally rushed out of the many obstacles, thinking that those are the sheep of Duk, but don't be happy too early, I don't think those people can truly believe in you." If she could see this goddess appear, Murin's face would certainly not look good at the moment, and she replied in a deep voice, "This is my agreement with Enril, and my promise to Aman. As for how they choose to face it, if they turn their backs on the guardian divine realm like the people of Duk did back then, I won't be able to protect them either. After all this suffering, the lost sheep should understand the choice of fate. I'm just warning you, don't have any ideas about Aman." Seth was still laughing. "Is there still a need for others to do anything to Aman? It's enough. Have you forgotten that magical curse, the man you love and the man you love, which one has ever had a good end? Enkidu has just proven this, how can Aman escape? Take a good look at Aman, he is still a child, and how much suffering has he endured over the years? The gods are looking forward to witnessing the curse that has plagued them once again display its unimaginable power." The clouds rolled, and Murin, holding the ivy in her hand, appeared, her anger rising. "Seth, what do you want? Don't tell me you want to just let it go." For a god who has transcended eternal life, the series of consequences that will be triggered is unpredictable. Seth looked at Murin, shook his head gently, clasped his hands together, and light and shadow flickered in the sky. He turned into a distorted light and disappeared, but his voice still came, "Murin, you have hurt too many men, so many that you have even forgotten yourself. Don't forget that the Ennead has also taken in a wandering lion king, and he is not as brave as Khepri. Aman has Tiamat's wrath in hand, and no one is willing to force him, but the lion king's temper is uncertain, and his curse will soon come true again." Murin shouted angrily, "You want to send the lion king out to deal with Aman? What good is that for you?" Seth's voice became more and more erratic, "I am not sending the lion king out, I am just telling him all this and allowing him to leave, he will naturally find that lover to duel, let Aman pray for Murin's blessing. Aman killed the prince of the empire of Igut, the temple will send someone to arrest him, and as the archangel they believe in, it is also my responsibility to let an emissary provide help." Aman untied the ropes towards the borders of Igut, he climbed mountains and waded through rivers, and directly passed through villages and roads without avoiding them, in fact, he did not care if anyone had seen him. At night, he also ate and stayed in several towns and bought a lot of tools. Rod-Dik had ordered the arrest of Aman throughout the territory of the city, and the inspection missions were carried out by the guards of the city and the various checkpoints, while the search missions were carried out by the NRA Legion. Such a large city could not be searched by thousands of people. If Aman wanted to deliberately hide, almost no one would be able to find him. But Aman walked in a straight line towards the border, passing through inhabited places along the way. He also saw soldiers on horses coming and going. Obviously they were all out to arrest Aman, many of whom Aman found familiar, because they were his former subordinates. Strangely, these soldiers galloped back and forth on various roads, but they could not catch Aman. Some of the cavalry even saw Aman walking on the road, and deliberately shouted, "People in a hurry, be careful, don't let the horses hit you. We are under orders to capture General Aman." Then he spurred his horse on and rode away from Aman's side. This made Aman a little depressed. The soldiers clearly saw him on the road, but they just pretended not to know him, and did not catch him. In fact, Aman did not want to be caught, nor did he want to hurt these soldiers. How could these cavalry be a match for him? A nosy mayor reported to the patrolling cavalry that a person who looked like Aman had passed through the town yesterday, and even stayed in an inn for a night. The mayor was immediately taken away by the soldiers, and was interrogated for the whole day, making it seem as though he was the wanted man. After confirming the situation, they assembled a large group of soldiers. The soldiers came to the vicinity of the town and searched everywhere, but Aman had long since left through the wilderness. The journey was peaceful and uneventful. The mountains and rivers flowed in front of him, and then receded under his feet. Aman then met a group of cavalry galloping on the official road, and when they saw him from afar, they led their horses slowly, and then walked past him with trepidation. The officer in charge even specially greeted him, "We are in the middle of a mission, further ahead is the border, people in a hurry, you still have one more night before you walk out of Igut." Aman nodded and said, "General on horseback, thank you." He finally smiled, and his heavy heart for the past few days felt a little lighter. This trip to Igut had not been in vain, and had left behind many beautiful memories. After resting in the mountains for a night, they continued forward and had reached a checkpoint on the border line, where there were dozens of soldiers stationed. It was 10 days after he killed Snake. The Temple of Isis received an urgent order from the capital, and several priests immediately recounted it to the saintess, and discussed it for a long time. Then Maria sent everyone away, and only called Gabriel over. She sat there in silence. Since she was a young girl, Gabriel had been by the side of this saintess, and had never seen her eyes so melancholy. The sky gradually darkened, and there was a twinkling starry sky outside the window, and Gabriel finally asked, "Saintess, does the order from the capital have anything to do with General Aman?" There was no emotion in Maria's tone, and she replied softly, "Yes, not only is it an order from the elder, but it is also a secret order jointly issued by the Shrine of Ra and the Imperial Conference of Clerics, and also an oracle from Archangel Seth, ordering the Temple of Isis to immediately send people to hunt down and kill Aman." Gabriel's tone was suppressed with grief and indignation. Why did they do this? Maria looked out the window, her eyes gazing across an unknown distance into the distance. Aman killed Prince Snake in the army, which has symbolized a break with the Empire of Igut, and any monarch can only make such a decision. Gabriel said, "I know about this, there were more than 1,000 witnesses." Snake told Aman to come back, and Aman came back. It was Snake who ordered the attack, and then he was killed by Aman with a single punch. Maria nodded. If it was Aman, would it still be possible for him to return to Igut for trial? Just like with Bear in the past, the Empire decided not to pursue this matter publicly, but to directly send someone to assassinate him. Gabriel frowned and asked, "Who are you planning to send?" Maria pushed a scroll of documents to the other side of the table. "The oracle has named him, and the elder has officially ordered this task to be given to him." It was Aman who was discovered by the Nile River, and he has made a great contribution to the Empire, and it is also a great contribution. Today he has broken with the Empire, and it is also our responsibility to destroy him. These are the words of the Elder's decree, the Empire will send him directly. Gabriel lowered her head and pursed her lips tightly in silence, while Maria looked at her with melancholy. After an unknown amount of time, Gabriel finally looked up and said, "Saintess, before I untie myself, do you have any other instructions?" Chapter 183. Gabriel took the parchment and asked, "The letter to me is also an order, but I can only read it after I fight Amon. But I'm a saintess, I'm going to assassinate him. If I'm still alive at that time, I'll understand." Maria waved her hand and interrupted her, "There's no need to say more. An order from the Empire is an order. I won't let anyone violate it. I also know who it is. Gabriel, how long have you been with me?" Gabriel bowed, "It's been 6 years since I first met you in Cape States." "Maria, if you're not the saintess of the Temple of Isis, do you have anything to tell me at this moment?" Maria looked out of the window and showed a faint smile. "Whether I'm the saintess or the girl named Maria, I have to thank you. What I want to say is already written in the letter. Is there anything else you want to tell me before untying the rope?" Gabriel stood up and said word by word, "This is a very difficult task. Since the Empire has appointed me, I have a few requests." Maria nodded and said, "It's only right to have some requirements when accepting such a mission. Right? Gabriel, I can't go alone, I need the cooperation of a mage, at least one of them." Maria replied, "I've already discussed with the 3 priests. There will be a mage. George used to be the chief priest of the Inare Legion. He volunteered to go with us on this task, and he won't come back if he can't complete the task." Gabriel was slightly startled. "The Dubhi continent is so big, I can't go aimlessly looking for him, and I won't go around openly. So the Empire needs to send spies to find the exact location of Amon's hiding place. I'm a noble warrior, this is in line with my identity, and the same goes for Priest George." Maria simply replied, "That's how it should be, let's do it. With Amon's whereabouts, we can untie the rope with Priest George. Gabriel, I also need a weapon." "Maria, you can choose all kinds of weapons and armors from the Temple of Isis's collection. No matter how precious they are, they will always belong to you." Gabriel shook his head, "I don't need a weapon from the temple, I just need all the mages and craftsmen in the temple to help me repair a weapon. It's the axe I used to fight with Enkidu. It's broken in many places. I've used all kinds of precious materials to refine and repair it. Now, I need all the mages and craftsmen to help me forge it into a perfect weapon. Maria, I will fulfill your request and mobilize all forces to help you forge this weapon. I will only release you after the ritual is completed. His Majesty has no time limit to complete the task." Gabriel bowed, "Thank you, Saintess." Maria looked at her meaningfully, "Your request is completely reasonable. Gabriel, have you also learned to do official business?" Thinking back to the time when Gabriel was ordered to escort the candidate Saintess Maria to the Cape States, she was alone. As a warrior, she didn't even have a follower for 1,000 miles. But now that she was ordered to assassinate Amon, she made so many requests. Gabriel replied, "Because this is carrying out the Empire's order, not fulfilling my own wishes. Then let's do it according to official rules." Maria nodded again, "Very well, everything is as you say." The discussion was over, but Gabriel didn't leave. He stood there hesitating for a moment, and finally couldn't help but ask, "Saintess, can we talk about something personal?" Maria smiled lightly, "This is a private place, you can say whatever you want." Gabriel let out a long sigh, "I'm not used to such words, but I can't. The Empire specifically asked me to assassinate Amon. Don't you think it's suspicious of using a borrowed knife to kill someone? The general is not guilty, it's just for the interests of the Empire to get rid of him. But don't forget that Amon himself is probably the best assassin in the world. He can capture a king alive, which is much more difficult than assassinating a king. Starting." Maria withdrew her gaze from the window and looked down at the table. "According to Seth, there will be an oracle, and there will be an emissary of the gods to assist. Gabriel, I don't care who will assist me. If I die in this operation, it's like someone is using Amon to get rid of me. I've had such an experience before I became a warrior, but this time it feels completely different. After I leave, what about you, Saintess? This is obviously aimed at you." Maria seemed to be talking to herself, "I know Amon, maybe better than he knows himself. The test I have to face is actually not him, so I asked him to read the letter after the battle. Rest assured, I'm not the girl of the past after all, and I no longer need to be protected all the time. What she meant was that Gabriel's assassination wouldn't succeed at all, because the warrior was no match for Amon, and she was sure that Amon wouldn't kill Gabriel. Gabriel didn't refute anything and continued, I know your situation very well. As the saintess of the Temple of Isis, you have become a symbol of the old covenant between the gods and Elder Merneptah's new reform. The next step must be targeted, and you need to change your identity and status. Only then will this reform regarding the gods be complete. Maria raised her head, I understand, but in any case, I'm still me. I hope you can also remember that when people come to this world, they will eventually leave. What is the faith they pursue? Gabriel wanted to say something but hesitated, so he bowed to the saintess and excused himself. Maria stood up and walked to the window. There was no light in the darkness, and the starlight shone on her through the window. She looked quietly into the distance, and no one knew what she was thinking. She stood like this all night. Amon crossed the mountains and fields in the night. Under the starry sky, he always felt that someone's eyes were watching him. The sky finally brightened, and he walked on an official road. This was the road that led out of the frontier and along the coastline to the Hittite kingdom of Saya. It was also the route he had taken when he led the Anare Legion. There was a checkpoint ahead. It was just dawn, and there was no one else on the road. The guards on duty were making a fire to cook, and smoke curled up from afar. Several warriors with spears opened the wooden gate in front of the checkpoint, and saw Amon walking over with a short staff at his waist and his hands behind his back. Due to the signing of an alliance treaty with the Hittite kingdom, the usual checks at this checkpoint were actually not strict, but now that they had received orders to arrest General Amon, the people who came and went had to be carefully interrogated. Amon walked over in the thin morning mist, and the soldier opposite shouted, You are in a hurry, what is your name, where are you coming from, and where are you going? Amon replied in a clear voice, My name is Amon, and I'm going to the plains of Duk. I heard that the Empire of Igut is looking for me. All the soldiers in the checkpoint, regardless of what they were doing, stopped in an instant, and then they ran out in formation with their weapons in hand. Amon walked over, and the soldiers lowered their heads as if they didn't see him. Amon shouted again, I am Amon. Suddenly, a soldier said to the person next to him, I heard thunder yesterday, and my ears were ringing. I couldn't hear anything clearly this morning. Another soldier replied, Me too, there's always an echo in my ears. The person in charge of the checkpoint came over and said to Amon, You are in a hurry and don't have any tools with you, so there's no need to check. You need to pay 5 copper coins to pass the checkpoint. If it's not convenient for you to carry it on you, I can lend you some. Seeing this, Amon knew that these soldiers were unwilling to arrest him, but according to the Empire's orders, if you see a fugitive and don't let go, you will be investigated in the future. Amon had wanted to announce his identity and then break through the checkpoint, not making things difficult for anyone and only announcing his departure, but he didn't expect the soldiers guarding the checkpoint to have such a reaction. He casually took out 5 copper coins and handed them to the person in charge. Thank you, I have money. Amon walked out of the checkpoint just like that, and dozens of soldiers lined up and pointed their weapons to the ground as a sign of respect. Not far ahead was the Gobi Desert, and if he followed the coastline north, he would reach the Saya Desert. Not long after Amon left the border, he suddenly heard the sound of hooves behind him. Someone was riding a fast horse and chasing after him. He stopped in his tracks and looked back. It was the person in charge of the checkpoint. That person rushed forward and jumped off his horse, bowed, and handed over a parcel. The desert is in front, you need food and water. Then, without saying a word, he turned around and jumped on his horse, ready to leave. Amon asked, Who are you? The person in charge replied, My name is Van Liert, and I was originally a cavalry under Captain Mahu. I grew up with Mahu and Miss Phi, and it was old Mahu who taught me physical arts. So that's what happened, what a coincidence. The group of soldiers stationed at the border checkpoint were recruited from Miss Phi's hometown. They were originally Mahu's subordinates and fellow townsmen, and were extremely grateful to General Amon, so it was no wonder that they would do something like this today. Amon had once wreaked havoc in Montefiore, and if Sabaf had not committed suicide, he would have been sent to guard this border checkpoint as well. Rod Dick had ordered the NRA Legion to search for Amon, and this governor must have known the outcome. It would be a miracle if he was caught. If any of the soldiers really dared to go against Amon, and it was not that they were no match for him, they would most likely be shot in the back when they returned to the Legion for training in the future. This was not a battle against an enemy, and the soldiers of the NRA Legion knew very well what kind of achievements General Amon had, and why he killed Prince Snek. Amon was grateful, and although he did not actually need this package, he still kept it in the bone. He continued on his way, following the coastline past undulating grasslands and sparse shrubs. The road gradually disappeared, or perhaps there was no longer a need for a road, and in front of him was the Gobi Desert. If someone were to follow behind Amon and observe him closely, they would find that although he seemed to be walking at a steady pace, he was actually moving faster than a carriage, and the distance he took with each step was as steady as if it had been measured by a ruler. It took a day to cross the Gobi Desert, and there were already light yellow sand dunes in front of him. At night, he sat on the sand dunes to rest and meditate, and when the sun rose, he continued to untie the rope. The last time he took this path, he was leading the mighty NRA Legion, but this time he was alone, and under the morning glow, his shadow on the sand dunes was very long. The morning glow was crimson, and the distant sea reflected a little bit of golden light in the azure blue. The undulating sand dunes turned into various shades of yellow, white, and pink. The sea breeze was a little moist, but under the sun, the sand gradually began to heat up. The scene in front of him was like an unfolding chest, vast and mysterious, and also a desolate beauty between the heaven and earth. A gust of wind blew, and Amon suddenly stopped and took a deep breath, and actually smelled the fragrance of wine. Although he wasn't an alcoholic like his father, but he was absolutely a first-class connoisseur of the world's best wine. Good wine. Looking at the distant horizon, there was a tent on the tallest sand dunes, and the fragrance of wine was coming from there. Amon used the puppet eye technique and saw that it was a golden-roofed tent, decorated with a glittering golden roof. 4 pillars propped up the tent, with gorgeous embroidered ribbons hanging from them. The tent was ventilated on all sides, with a roof but no curtains, just like a pavilion. Inside the large tent sat a man, with long golden brown hair, dressed in large red clothes. When Amon saw him, he had an inexplicable feeling, mighty. This man looked to be around 30 years of age, his physique was extremely majestic, and his whole body emitted a kind of dignified aura. In this desolate desert, it was as if invisible creatures were lightly trembling under his pressure. There was a table in the large tent, and there were 3 chairs by the side, but only one person. On the table were fine wine and delicacies, and this man was currently holding a large golden cup inlaid with all kinds of gems, drinking wine. When Amon saw him, this man also had a reaction, and raised his head, saying, "Traveler, where is your hometown? The road is long and lonely, why stop and drink wine with a strange friend?" Looking at his appearance, he didn't seem to have a big voice, but his natural-born voice was astonishing. The wind carried a buzzing sound, coming from so far away, and even the sand dunes beside Amon actually had an echo. Amon walked over step by step. As he walked he said, "Strange friend, why are you drinking wine here? The scenery is so beautiful, but the atmosphere is so bleak that it breaks one's heart. Fine wine entering your throat, may I ask who are you waiting for?" That man stood up. "I am waiting, Amon." Amon had already walked close. This path of fine sand didn't even have a trace. But when he walked up this sand dune, it was as if he was going against an invisible gale. With every step, the sand seemed to instantly turn into quicksand, rapidly falling downwards. The corners of his clothes and hair fluttered backwards, a whistling sound resounded in his ears, but the surrounding scenery was so quiet and serene. Amon didn't slow down. Step by step he walked up this huge sand dune. The quicksand under his feet flowed down like ripples in the water, finally disappearing without a trace. This was a soundless battle. The man on the sand dune stood there, imperceptibly giving off such an intense pressure, as if he was a god. Meeting like this, it was clear that he didn't come with good intentions. The opponent had long been waiting here. Aman couldn't hide even if he wanted to. After ascending the sand dune, he asked, "Waiting for me? I don't remember seeing you." The man smiled, pointed to the opposite chair and said, "Strangers can also sit together and drink wine. In this world there aren't many people who can sit calmly opposite me and drink wine. Does General Aman have the guts to do so? What do you think of the wine here?" Aman pulled over a chair and sat down. "One smell and I know it's good wine. To prepare such fine wine in such a desolate place, it's really thoughtful, especially to entertain me." The man also sat down and replied, "It's to entertain, and also for myself. The journey of life is so dangerous, why not treat life well?" Aman nodded and said, "I can see that you are a person who knows how to enjoy life, waiting for someone in this desert, and even setting up such a tent, setting up such a banquet, like a king on an outing. Can you tell me your name, and what business do you have with me?" The man said unhurriedly, "Sounds very smart, then guess who I am." Aman shrugged, "How can I guess? Why don't you just tell me, which god sent the emissary?" The man said, "When the sun rises, I enjoy the glory bestowed by the gods on the grassland. When the shadow of the mountains is the shortest, I yearn for eternal youth and beautiful love. When the gods fall, my home disappears, I wander alone under the setting sun with injuries." Is this old ballad referring to me or me? The lover that Murin favors, Aman. Aman suddenly thought of something, narrowed his eyes and asked, "Giant lion?" The man smiled, "Not stupid indeed, I am Lion King Yugalu." Aman said in surprise, "I've heard of your legend, but we haven't had any dealings. Why did you specially come to me?" "If it's because of Murin, I think your enmity has nothing to do with me. If it's to cover my path, I will continue to walk." At this moment, another strong force suddenly came from the ground. Not far away, a sand dune surged up, revealing 3 human figures. A muscular man and 2 enchanting beauties emerged from the sand. They turned out to be old acquaintances. Aman stood up and said, "Scorpion King. Why are you here?" Giraffe walked into the tent with Ice Scorpion and Fire Scorpion, sat down and said with a smile, "After hundreds of years, the Lion King has finally come out, and he is even more powerful than before. I heard that he is looking for a duel and asked me to be the arbitrator. How can I miss such a lively event? Come, let's drink this cup first." After Giraffe sat down, he put Ice Scorpion and Fire Scorpion on his lap. Ice Scorpion poured the wine, and Fire Scorpion raised the cup and fed it to his mouth. Giraffe drank a full cup and smacked his lips. "Good wine. Yugalu, you have always known how to enjoy, but it's a pity that you have to pour wine for yourself. Why not bring a few lionesses? Could it be that you are still thinking about Murin, or are you still afraid that the goddess will be jealous?" Chapter 184. As soon as they met, they laughed at each other, leaving Aman to the side. Aman put down his cup and asked, "Lion King, do you want to duel me? You've even invited a referee, but you haven't asked me if I like it. If you want to use a duel to prove Murin's love, I think you're using the wrong method." The Lion King turned his head and said, "I'm not dueling with you to prove who loves Murin, let alone to decide who the goddess will fall in love with. Drink this cup of wine, and then tell me the reason." "Actually, I'm from the Ennead." Aman drank his cup in one gulp and said in a deep voice, "The Ennead? Did Seth send you to duel me?" Yugalu's voice shook the surrounding air with the echo of metal clashing. "It was Seth who asked me to come. The shrine of Igut will send people to kill me. Jaite asked me to follow behind those pursuers and help at critical moments. But I don't want to do that, I only want to solve it in my own way, so I rushed to meet the pursuers." The Scorpion King interjected, "This lion didn't listen to Seth's warnings. Didn't Seth tell you that Tiamat's wrath is in Amon's hands, and you still want to duel him?" The Lion King stared at Aman and said, "I know you have a Tiamat's wrath in your hands, but do you have the control to unfold it before I kill you?" Aman could only smile bitterly to himself. The real Tiamat's wrath had been taken away by Maria, and the one he had was only a fake. Although it looked flawless, it was uncertain whether it could fool the eyes of Oil and the Lion King. Unfolding it also meant death, and no one would use it unless it was absolutely necessary to perish together with the enemy. Moreover, this scroll was not necessarily something that could be used when one wanted to use it. Amon had experienced this when facing Enkidu in the army, and when he was fighting Enkidu, he didn't even have time to unfold the scroll. Usually, this was just a simple action, but in the end, it required time and energy. Moreover, using it on the battlefield was equivalent to killing everyone within the scope of the attack, regardless of friend or foe. Today, Amon's achievements and realm were higher than before, and his strength was also much deeper. He was confident that even if he encountered Enkidu again, even if he wasn't a match for him, he would still have the opportunity to use Tiamat's wrath. He replied nonchalantly, "I can try." The Lion King smiled and waved his hand. "I'm not a fool. After several hundred years of cultivation, I have achieved what I have today. Naturally, I know how to cherish life. I will not fearlessly perish together with my enemies. Even if I want to force him to use Tiamat's wrath, I'm afraid Jirizhui won't agree to it. He promised to be the arbitrator, so of course, he won't get himself involved." Amon asked again, "Then what do you want? Don't you want to duel with me?" The Lion King said, "A duel is just a kind of agreement. It's to separate the two parties and keep the promise. There's no need to kill the opponent. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have the ability to activate Tiamat's wrath in front of me." Oil Water interjected again, "Yugalu, there's too much empty talk. How exactly do you want to duel?" The Lion King unhurriedly raised the jug of wine on the table. He did not pour it into a cup, but drank it directly into his mouth. After putting down the jug, he said, "It's very simple. As long as Amon can withstand 3 of my roars, he wins." Jirizhui hugged the 2 scorpion monsters and laughed. 3 roars, he can still withstand it. If I really wanted to kill him, I would have thrown out Tiamat's wrath a long time ago. Yugalu replied nonchalantly, "Yes, I don't want to force him to perish together. If I can make him unable to even throw out the scroll, how would he be qualified to duel with me? If he can still sit still after my 3 roars, then he is qualified to sit here and drink with me." Oil Water tilted his head and glanced at Yugalu. "After your injuries are healed, your realm is even higher than before. Are you going to roar now? Then I'll hide away first." Yugalu laughed. "Scorpion King, you don't even have this little ability. I invited you to be the arbiter, yet you still have to hide." Oil Water pinched the waist of the 2 scorpions. "I'm not afraid, but I'm afraid that my 2 beloved concubines won't be able to stand it." Yugalu, then take care of them and let Amon see the magical powers of the Scorpion King. In short, he has to sit still and not move. If he moves, it's my loss." Oil Water snorted. "This lion is really stubborn. Alright, I'll hold my 2 beloved concubines and not move, and roar as much as I want. I'll start first." Yugalu asked Amon again, "Are you ready?" Amon raised an arm. "Wait. You still haven't figured out why you want to duel with me? And I didn't promise to duel with you." Yugalu looked at Amon with interest. "You're a very interesting person, I can tell you what happened. In the past, when I wandered far away with my injuries, Seth helped me and allowed me to recuperate in the Ennead Divine Realm. Later, he allowed me to cultivate in the Eru Divine Palace. As a reward, I helped him when he defeated Horus, so I don't owe him anything anymore. But to leave the Ennead Divine Realm for free, he asked me to do him another favor, that is, as an emissary, to act in the dark when I was being hunted by the Temple of Igut. But I refused to do that, and publicly showed up to duel with him before the pursuers arrived." This was already giving face to Murin. Amon smiled bitterly. "In that case, do I have to sit and listen to 3 roars?" The Lion King blinked. "You can also run, if you don't want to duel with me, you can run away now. I will only see you as prey that has been scared away, don't forget that I'm a lion. But in that case, I can't disobey Seth's instructions and help the pursuers in the dark. Are you willing to be watched by me all the time? Aman poured himself a full glass of wine and picked up the glass. I'm not planning to run, I just want to ask clearly. Since it's an agreement, there has to be something to pay attention to after the outcome, right? The Lion King said to the Scorpion King, since he has been invited to arbitrate, it's up to you to tell him our conditions. Oil said, if Aman can still sit there steadily after Yugalu roars 3 times, even if Yugalu loses, he will have done what he should have done for Seth, send a gift to Zhenmeng, and be done with it. Yugalu, the gift is ready, as long as Aman has the ability to obtain it, consider it my apology. But if he loses, it will be equivalent to Seth winning, and don't forget that I am here for Seth's mission. Aman wants to promise to build a shrine for Seth in the plains of Duk and hold a ritual to summon the gods. Oil laughed. That would also be equivalent to us winning, Lion King. That gift still has to be given to Aman, and in exchange, he also needs to build shrines for us in the plains of Duk and hold a ritual to summon the gods. Yugalu said to Aman, that's how it is, there are 2 choices, either promise to duel me, or run away now. Aman took a sip of wine and took a deep breath. The conditions seem fair, but I don't understand, why does Seth want to build a shrine in the plains of Duk, and why do you 2 want to get involved? Yugalu and Giraffe looked at each other and said, there's no need to worry about that yet. Aman didn't want to explain too much to these 2, but in fact he understood many of the secrets involved, so he just looked at the wine glass and said, I know one thing, if there is no sincere sacrifice and faith from the people, the statue is like a soulless shell. Do you 2 care about this form? Yugalu laughed loudly, and it seemed as if the clouds in the sky were trembling with his laughter, and even the wine jug on the table jumped up. The Lion King did not let out a loud roar, he was just talking and laughing, and already had such power. He smiled and said, you're right, but you haven't fully understood many things in the human world. Not only will we build a shrine, but we will also hold a ritual to summon the gods. In this way, we will be able to understand a lot of things that happen in the plains of Duk, and through the wishes people make in front of the statue, it is also a kind of practice to experience everything in the human world. As for whether there are sacrifices or faith, there is no need to worry about that, because the shrine is there, and there will always be people who will come to the shrine to express their desires for various reasons such as awe or expectations. Oil also added with a smile, the Lion King is doing this in a fit of pique, it was originally Murin's divine realm, but he insists on building a shrine. As for me, I also want to vent my anger and show Marduk and Enlil. Aman nodded and said, I understand, then please begin. Yugalu put away his smile and asked again, don't you want to see what the gift I'm going to give you is? Aman shook his head and said, whether you're going to give me a gift or not, this duel will be accepted by my city, and it won't be too late to see after the duel is over, and I don't want to ask what it is first. The Lion King said with slight approval, truly a man who will not be tempted by temptation, the power of hope is as strong as the will. Aman had thought he would open his mouth to roar, but Yugalu sat there without moving at all, just looking at him quietly. Aman was never afraid to look anyone in the eye, and he also looked at Yugalu and suddenly found that his eyes were somewhat familiar, very much like the pupils of a dark cat, and these pupils were actually roaring. In this moment of illusion, the surrounding scenery changed, the desolate desert became a vast grassland with no end in sight, the tent and table disappeared, and only a giant lion the size of a mountain stood in the distance, opening its bloody mouth and roaring at the sky. He was actually sucked into the illusion that Yugalu had unfolded, the lion's roar shook the heavens and the earth, and Aman seemed to be just an unknown creature, all the creatures on the grassland trembled and prostrated themselves in the lion's roar. Aman was very clear-headed in the midst of the shock, and gently placed his right leg over his left leg, then a chair appeared under him, and a wine glass appeared in his hand. Then all the scenery returned to normal, and he returned to the tent on the sand dune. Sitting opposite him was still the Lion King Yugalu. Oil Water laughed and said, this roar didn't knock him down, if it was a battle, he could already unleash Tiamat's wrath. Yugalu replied with a calm face, No one will choose to self-destruct before falling into a desperate situation. This boy's willpower is very good, not like those demons we once killed. Pay attention, there are 2 more roars. As soon as he arrived, Aman could not hear anything. The tent and the table in front of him disappeared. This time it was not an illusion, but was forcefully shattered, and not in pieces, but instantly turned into powder under the violent tremors. The roar was so intense that there was silence between the heavens and the earth. Aman closed his eyes, neither looking nor listening, but he could feel the intense impact, like 2 mountains colliding and crushing together. This soundless roar could turn everything into powder, and under its impact, people could not control their own power, as if their bodies and souls were separated. If Aman was suppressed by the roar, he could not use any of the scrolls, and it was too late to perish together. Oil Water sat to one side, the Ice Scorpion and Fire Scorpion in her arms showing pained expressions. The surrounding sand rose up, wrapping around their bodies in a strange flow, with a sharp tremor blocking the impact of the roar, allowing the 2 scorpion demons to barely withstand it. After an unknown amount of time, Aman finally opened his eyes, and was shocked to find that the sun had already risen to the highest point. He had met Yugalu not long after sunrise, waiting for the Lion King to appear. They did not talk for long, and now it was actually noon. His eyelids twitched, and the soundless roar disappeared. The quicksand that enveloped the Scorpion King fell, and Oil Water patted the shoulders of his 2 beloved concubines. Don't be afraid, it's all right. Yugalu, don't ruin the banquet, I haven't had enough yet. The Lion King stared at Aman with wide eyes, a trace of fatigue in his eyes. The 2 roars just now were very exhausting. Aman also felt waves of weakness, but he did not say a word and continued to look at him. Yugalu waved his red sleeves, obviously also wearing a spatial item. In the blink of an eye, another banquet was set up. Oil Water's hands rubbed the chests of the 2 demon scorpions. The Ice Scorpion and Fire Scorpion had already softly leaned against his arms. The Scorpion King finally reached out to pour wine, and said while drinking, Aman, you really have some skill. Yugalu's roar was unable to make you lose the ability to resist, and if it was really a life and death struggle, you can no longer stop the Tiamat's wrath from unfolding. He still had one last roar. In fact, it was not only about strength, but also about heart. Yugalu, who had been sitting all this time, finally stood up, and reached across the table to point at Aman. As he extended his finger, the world suddenly became silent and colorless. Everything disappeared, there was no sound, no image, no sense of feeling. The existence of the human body depended on feeling. If the body could not be felt, there would be no way to command it to move, no way to sense external stimuli, and no way to react. The world disappeared, and he himself also disappeared. Just like when Aman did not pass the strange test when he broke through to the 8th level, his soul would be lost in this instant, and he would lose control of his body. If this was a battle, he should have broken the opponent's technique long ago. But this was not a real struggle, it was just a kind of agreement, a competition of realms. Aman's lonely soul was like a peaceful home. The so-called body was nothing more than a reflection of the soul, the so-called light that could not be seen and did not need to be seen in a world that had nothing. Immediately after, a roar came from the endless void. This sound was not heard, but the vibration of the soul in a world that had nothing, as if it was about to shatter the consciousness. Those countless past events that were hidden in the memory suddenly appeared clearly, taking people away from the world and pulling them into the ridges of space and time. As long as they thought about it, they would be lost in the river that their own soul imprint passed through. This was a real illusion. If it was the Aman of the past, perhaps he would have immediately thrown out a scroll of space turbulence to quickly escape this invisible imprisonment, because he simply could not see where the enemy was. But at this time, Aman did not move at all. Not only was his body sitting there steadily, but his heart did not waver in the slightest. When the sun finally pierced through the void and sprinkled down, he returned to the desert by the sea, holding half a glass of wine in his hand. Yugalu looked at him with a disbelieving gaze and said, "With this last roar of mine, even if I am not a match for him, I can still use my magic to resist the test and break free. But it was not bound by me at all. How is this possible? Could it be that it is also a confirmation of the endless gods? Amon smiled and let out a long breath. Maybe I am luckier, so I can withstand the third roar. The Lion King is stronger than me, and his results are also higher than mine, but it is not that I do not have the strength to fight. If you really want to kill me, even without the Tiamat's wrath, the price you have to pay is very high. Thank you for using this method to solve the problem, and thank you for the wine. He slowly drank the half-glass of wine, and only now felt a buzzing echo in his mind. His spirit was exhausted, and his joints were sore, as if he had gone through a fierce battle. The sun was already setting in the west, and looking at the ice scorpion and fire scorpion in Oil Water's arms, they had already fainted. Amon was able to withstand this roar thanks to his experience in Schrodinger's spiritual imprint, and he naturally could not tell Yugalu and Oil Water about this. Oil Water sighed and said, Yugalu, according to the agreement, Amon has won. I didn't expect it to be a bait. Amon, congratulations. Oil Water waved his hand, and a tool flew towards Amon. Amon stretched out the horn that he had sharpened. It was completely different from an ordinary horn. It was more than 3 feet long, curved with a slight spiral arc, and had obviously been tempered by power. It was flawless, translucent with agate-like patterns. Amon asked in surprise, is this a well? The Lion King looked at the horn in Amon's hand with a sad look in his eyes. You should have heard of our legends. Back then, during the War of the Gods of the Anunnaki divine clan, Oil Water and I were both beast kings on the side of Tiamat and Kingu. He was the human-faced scorpion, and I was the giant lion. In that battle, there were also the 9-headed snake monster and the charm mermaid. The charm mermaid is still missing, and later the 9-headed snake monster, Humbaba, was killed by Enkidu. In that battle, one of the 9 beast kings, Barbarian Bull, was killed by Murin. This is the horn of Barbarian Bull, which Murin gave to me as a souvenir. It is a material for forging sacred artifacts, and it is already an extremely powerful artifact. I don't want to keep it anymore. If I see Murin, I will take out this horn and tell her what happened today. Chapter 185. After Link returned, he urged Aesop to direct the residents to step up the construction of the city's defenses and hoard war supplies, while reminding John to seize the time to train the official army. A few days later, Madanzo also rushed to meet with Link and learn of the latest situation. He also felt that the situation was serious and complicated, and immediately took a shuttle to find Amon to ask what to do. This was the series of events that happened after Moses and the others left Igut. Amon frowned after listening, some of which he had expected, because in the ancient legends, when the land of Marduk, where the gods had fallen, became fertile again, the god of the gods would be born. Regardless of whether the legends were true or not, this place was bound to become the source of divine power for the gods, and even if some gods themselves may not have the ambition, they had to pay attention to what happened there to prevent other gods from occupying this position and making the legends a reality. Even Seth, who was far away in Igut's Ennead, tried to intervene. But one thing was unexpected: where did the Highlanders at the foot of the Assyrian plateau come from? Judging from their organizational ability and material equipment, they were definitely not primitive tribes that had migrated spontaneously from the mountains, and should be trained warriors and craftsmen. Amon himself was once the commander-in-chief of the battlefield and a great general of the empire, and listening to Madanzo's description, he felt that these people should be the vanguard and logistics personnel of a regular corps. Not only did they know how to build city defenses and reclaim the wilderness, but they also knew how to mine mines and smelt refined iron. Weapons, tents, farming tools, and tools all seemed to be issued at the same time. The first batch of nearly 2,000 people were all Highlanders, and after the establishment of the gathering point, many residents of the continent appeared in the camp, dressed like unemployed wanderers from various countries. It was impossible for them to spontaneously appear in such a place at the same time, so it must have been an organized migration. Although the floods on the plains of Duk had receded and the terrain had finally stabilized, it was still difficult to see people, and it was not convenient to get there. To the north was the towering Assyrian plateau, to the west was the wooded charcoal marsh, and to the east was the steep Euphrates River valley. If the majority of the troops wished to enter, the best route would be through the inland lake in the south. They could either cross the inland lake and pass through a patch of grasslands and swamps, or cross over a mountainous region from the east shore of the inland lake. This was also the path Moses and the others took, and there was already the Marduk city built by Ussur on that path. It was possible for a strong party of explorers to enter the plains of Duk from various targets, but it was almost impossible for an organized party to reach there at this time. A few years ago, Aman had guided Link from the Euphrates Valley to the deserted island that had just emerged from the water. That was how Link was able to establish a city-state first. Ussur, who had established a city-state in the southeast corner of the plains of Duk, had also long planned to gain the dark support of Princess Scarlet and the Kingdom of Babylon in order to gain a foothold at this time. But where did the new cities in the north come from? They were the strongest force on the plains of Duk, and their numbers were still increasing. To reach there, the only way was to cross the Assyrian plateau, which was covered in snow all year round, and carry so many supplies. An organized operation was not something that could be accomplished with the strength of an individual, and it could only be an order from a kingdom. On the other side of the Assyrian plateau was the kingdom of Assur. There were 4 countries around the plains of Duk, and the kingdom of Assur had the narrowest territory and relatively barren land, not as rich and prosperous as the other 3 countries, and its overall national strength was the weakest. But the Assyrian army was brave and good at fighting, and there was also a legion of highlanders known as the Giant Legion. Even the kingdom of Babylon, which was close to the south, did not dare to provoke them easily. The kingdom of Assur had been content to stay in a corner for many years, and there was no news of them. Due to the obstruction of the Assyrian plateau and the relative weakness of their national strength, the kingdom of Assur was originally in the most unlucky position to compete for the plains of Duk, but now the situation had changed very subtly. If the kingdom of Assur was really willing to cross the Assyrian plateau and forcibly annex the plains of Duk, it would instead be the most advantageous strategic position. The Dubhi continent had just erupted in a chaotic war between the kingdoms. First, the Empire of Igut fought a major war against the Hittite kingdom, then the Uruk Legion, the strongest army of the kingdom of Babylon, fought a major war against the army of Igut led by Ammon, and then Goliath and Prince Ashur fought a major war against the army of Babylon. This series of wars had severely weakened the strength of the various kingdoms in a short period of time. The strongest empire of Igut suffered heavy losses, and although Ammon turned the tide, the price paid was also extremely high. Later, after the sudden death of the old Lazith II, the new and old Merneptah built a new capital in the country and carried out a monotheistic reform. At present, what needed to be resolved was internal affairs, and no more expeditions could be launched. The Hittite kingdom was the de facto winner in both wars, and Goliath was not gone, but the wars had also depleted the national strength of the Hittite kingdom. Although they were freed from the status of vassals of the Egyptian Empire, the 2 princes almost caused the kingdom to be divided in order to fight for the throne. The current political situation was actually not stable, and they also needed to recuperate. Unless they were forced to, they would not carry out another large-scale war. The kingdom of Babylon was originally a kingdom second only to the empire of Igut in terms of strength, but it had suffered the most losses, and was the de facto loser. The Uruk Legion was repelled, Enkidu fell, Gilgamesh retired, and the army was almost wiped out in the war against the Hittite kingdom. Taking advantage of the civil strife in Hittite, Prince Feng-nu had a chance to reverse the situation. The Assyrian king, who had been recuperating, suddenly made a move, and according to Ammon's judgment, the Assyrian king must have sent the giant legion to cross the plateau and suddenly appear, catching everyone off guard. Based on the current situation in the plains of Duk, the advanced legion of the Assyrian kingdom was building a city at the foot of the mountains in the north and building a shrine for Enlil. And in the southeast corner, on the most convenient road into the plains of Duk, Ussur was also building a city and a shrine for Marduk. Enlil was naturally unwilling to abandon this divine realm, and he might even have the ambition to become the god of the gods, while Marduk should also want to take back the land that made him famous in one battle. These two gods both belonged to the Anunnaki divine clan, but they were enemies who refused to submit to each other. Now that there were two main gods in the divine realm of the same divine clan, it was a good opportunity to settle the thousand-year feud. The affairs of the gods were not easy to predict, but the kingdoms on earth also had their own conflicts of interest. Both Babylon and Assyria wanted to take advantage of the instability of the internal affairs of Igut and Hittite to occupy these thousands of miles of fertile land, especially the Assyrian kingdom. The entire plains of Duk was not only equivalent to one-third of the territory of Assyria, but it would also be a fertile land rich in resources, far more than many of the desolate areas of the Assyrian kingdom. If nothing unexpected happened, the first round of competition on the plains of Duk would take place between these two city-states, and the final outcome was unknown. But now there was a variable, and Amon had asked Link to build a city on the site of the former town of Duk, like a nail inserted between the two. The situation was as confusing as a mess, and it was difficult for the average person to sort out. Seeing that Amon was silent for a long time, Madanzo couldn't help but ask, "Ammonius, what do you think we should do?" "Everyone is looking forward to your orders. If you want to drive away the Highlanders in the north, John will concentrate all his forces to fight them." Amon shook his head and said, "One thing must be clear, we are no match for them, and Link's few thousand men cannot go to war with a kingdom." Madanzo was slightly stunned. "A kingdom?" Amon nodded. "Yes, perhaps we have already guessed this possibility. Those people at the foot of the mountain in the north are the advance legion sent by the Assyrian kingdom. Their goal should be to incorporate the entire plains of Duk into the territory of the Assyrian kingdom. With the current strength of Link and the others, they cannot completely destroy the other side, let alone now that they are surrounded by enemies. Usur, who represents the kingdom of Babylon, is still stuck at the entrance to the plains of Duk, and we cannot act rashly. Aesop's proposal for cooperation is wise, and we should try to maintain this situation as long as possible." Madanzo asked again, "What about the future? Link built the city under your guidance, what kind of place do you want it to be?" Amon looked up at the sky and replied, "Actually, I didn't think so much at first, I just did it. The town of Duk is my hometown, where my people have lived for generations. At first, I only wanted to fulfill the last wishes of Mayor Dusty and the promise to Murin to let my people return to their homeland and rebuild it. It was once so desolate that not even a few thousand people could survive, and they needed to mine minerals in exchange for supplies from the outside world. It was only later that I learned that the land of Marduk was the place where the gods fell, and that my people were sinners who were exiled in ancient times because they believed in the gods of the defeated side. The heavy labor for generations was a kind of reward and punishment, and it was the goddess Murin who kept them alive. Now that all this is over, the plains of Duk will become 1,000 miles of fertile land flowing with milk and honey, the scale of which is far larger than the original town of Duk. My purpose may be very simple, that is, I want the people of Link to have a beautiful home to live in, and to fulfill the wish of my people to live in the rich land of their homeland. All this has nothing to do with the gods, but it is inevitable that it will be involved in the struggle between the kingdoms and even the gods. I think of the former town of Duk, which was also under the jurisdiction of many kingdoms in history. In addition to the shrine of Murin, there was also the shrine of Horus, which I have seen with my own eyes, and there are even more that I have not seen. But it has never really been conquered, for the simple reason that the price is not worth it. Murin once had a wish that I would build a new city-state there, and whether this wish can be fulfilled or not, I hope that my people can live in peace in their homeland. This is my guidance and promise to Moses and the others in the name of Allah. No matter what happens in the future, they must do one thing, and that is to have the strength and faith to protect themselves. If the price of conquering or expelling them exceeds the benefits that can be obtained, they will be able to establish a foothold there, regardless of the name. I am about to go to Saya to fight Celia, and I can talk to Goliath about a cooperation that should have been discussed a long time ago, and continue to provide support to Link and the others." Metatro blinked as he listened, and after a while, he said, "So it turns out that God Amon already had a plan. Regardless of how long it has been, you have a plan in mind, so let's do as you say. Link also wants to ask you one more thing, what should the name of the new city-state we build be called? Should it still be called Duk? Aman shook his head and said, the town of Duk was named after Marduk, symbolizing the war of the gods and the reward and punishment of the sinners, so naturally we can't use this name anymore. This new city-state will be called the city of Salem. It has been a place of contention for the gods since its birth, and there is no telling when peace and tranquility will come. Aman named the city-state Salem, meaning peace and tranquility, and he knew in his heart that the emergence of this city-state was bound to be accompanied by endless conflict and contention. Madanzo sighed, it's a good name, like the hope people see when they look at the sky. Moses and the others are still waiting outside the plains of Duk. Will you let them take a detour, or will you send John to lead the army to meet them? Aman thought for a moment and replied with a faint smile, Usur received an oracle from Marduk, and the condition was that they should not build statues of other gods except Marduk. This condition doesn't seem like much to me, because I have guided the people of Duk in the name of Allah, and none of them, including Moses, have ever seen me, and I have asked them to accept the guidance of faith, but I have never asked them to build statues for me, not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Madanzo's eyes widened, and he suddenly realized, then this problem has been solved, just get Moses to promise Usur's condition. They will not build statues of any gods, and they can choose not to build statues for Marduk. You are their only God, eternal in their faith. I'll go back and tell Moses and the others. Aman waved his hand and said, there's no need to remind them, Moses is their leader, and he should know how to guide the people. This is their last test before they reach Salem, and it is up to them to decide. They are not only returning home, but also freeing themselves from the old agreement between the gods, and they are no longer the Duk miners of the past. Madanzo, oh, I see. You want to give them another kind of guidance, so what should I do? Aman looked at Madanzo and said, from today onwards, you will be the head of all my disciples, and you will also be the hardest working one. Right now, there are a few things that I have to tell you to do. Aman asked Madanzo to return to Salem first and convey his orders to Link, John, Aesop, and the others, telling them to explore a road in the charcoal marsh, find various areas where they could stand, fill in the intermittent low-lying areas, and connect them to the southern end of Saya, with the assistance of the 4 iron backs. This would take some time, and even if the road was built, it would not be suitable for large military formations to pass through, but it could allow an endless stream of caravans to come and go. The second thing Madanzo had to do was to send a message to the Ironback King El-Mar, asking El-Mar to rush to the designated address to meet up. Aman was going to give this Ironback King many pointers in training, and at the same time, he was going to take El-Mar to join the duel with Celia. After El-Mar was released, Madanzo also had to control the shuttle to take Aesop back to Montefiore to find the wealthy businessman Sayo to talk about a very important business deal. Aman had invested a large sum of money in Sayo's trading firm, but because there was a big business deal to be done in the future, he asked Sayo to expand his trading firms everywhere and buy a large number of carriages and horses, and now it was time to use them. Business had its own way of doing business, and Aesop was the most suitable person to do this. After finishing these 3 things, Madanzo also had to rush to the city of Marduk where Usur was, bring a message to Usur, discuss another kind of cooperation, and at the same time pay attention to Moses and the others in the darkness. He was busy enough, and after listening, he hurriedly accepted the order and left. After Madanzo left, Aman waved his hand, and the golden-topped tent on the sand dune, the tables and chairs in the tent, and the luxurious utensils on the table were all collected into the bone. He really didn't waste, even taking away the tools left behind by the Lion King. The high sand dune by the sea returned to its original state, as if nothing had happened. The sun had already set, and the sky was full of twinkling stars. Aman sat quietly on the sand dune all night, and after dawn continued north across the Saya desert, his destination the place where he and Celia had agreed to duel. No matter how complicated the affairs of the world were, this solitary youth just walked step by step towards his goal. Aman didn't take the shuttle, all his flying devices had been handed over to his disciples, and he didn't use his magic to fly into the sky, but walked on the sand as he did when he came. The sun gradually rose, the sand began to heat up, and the hot air spiraled up from the surface. Looking from afar, the light was distorted, and Amon's lonely figure gradually became a little dazed. As he walked, his dazed figure strangely disappeared, and no footprints could be seen on the sand, and no one could be seen under the sun. Amon entered a strange state of meditation, and as he walked, he naturally hid his tracks. The sun rose high and then slowly set in the west, and then the stars appeared, but Amon's shadow was never seen in the desert. The sand dunes seemed quiet at night, but there were still all kinds of slight sounds, and scorpions crawled out of the sand dune, leaving shallow traces of their presence. No one knew where Amon was, only he knew where he was going. He was like a wisp of thought as he walked, thinking on the road, invisible, but present. Amon was thinking about a question, and after seeing the Amitba, he, Girdablulla, and Yugalu all realized that there were unknown divine clans in the world, and that there might be different gods. He had learned about the various past events of the Ennead and the Anunnaki, including the cat goddess Batet, who had accompanied him, and Murin, the goddess of youth and love who admired and guided him. Of course, he was happy to get along with them. But if it was purely about the existence of gods, Amon didn't like these divine clans. Since he left the town of Duk, he had been carrying the mission of unraveling the secrets of the gods and proving the way to become a god, but at the moment he was thinking about another, deeper question. If I can become a god, what kind of god will I be? I don't like those gods myself, I even hate them. With this belief, no matter how hard I practice, I can't become such a god. This is determined by the test of the power of the source. If there comes a day when I will pass the test of fate, the judgment of the end, my wish is not to join or establish such a divine clan, to become such a god. I want to build a home in my belief, which can guide all who yearn for it, and not be deliberately guided by the gods. Chapter 186. Manjushri looked back with a smile, her charm indescribable, and said, if the information illusion cast by magic is like this, the things of the world are like birds in the sky, like people are annoyed, like waking up from a dream. Now that you have escaped from the sea of bitterness, you should seek to establish your own everything. If you want to seek the Tao, why not come with me? Yugalu put down his wine glass and strode down the sand dune. Those people walked leisurely, but Yugalu could not catch up. Then with a roar, he turned into a lion and ran forward, soon disappearing into the horizon. The Scorpion King put down the Ice Scorpion and Fire Scorpion, turned and shouted, Lion King, now that you have escaped from the divine realm of the Ennead, where are you going with these people? We haven't finished talking about our business yet. The sound of sprinkling water echoed in the desert, but Yugalu had already run out of sight. Sprinkling water scolded in the direction where he had disappeared. This lion's temper hasn't changed, still so easily moved and stubborn. He had just escaped from the Ennead, but who knows where he was abducted by some god. Then, he turned around and sat down. The ferocious Scorpion King's expression was a little bleak. He looked at the wine on the table and muttered to himself, where did this god come from? What are they preaching? It seems that there are still unknown divine clans in this world. Without the guidance of a divine clan, it is too difficult to explore alone, but I refuse to turn back. After Yugalu left, the Scorpion King drank a few mouthfuls of wine before looking up at Amon and saying, Murin has taken a liking to him, and the gods are saying that she did not hesitate to abandon her ex-husband, Demuzid, and even sent Demuzid to the underworld in exchange. She will definitely be introduced into the Anunnaki divine clan. It is a great fortune for her to be a practitioner of the mortal world. But how difficult is it to truly transcend eternal life? I hope there will be such a day. If you are not interested in what those gods said just now, I am afraid you are even less interested in my scorpion suggestion. The righteous sect has already stepped into the Anunnaki divine clan, and there is indeed no need to waver in their beliefs because of this. Amon smiled bitterly, don't you know my relationship with Enlil? It was he who instigated the flood that destroyed my home, and no matter what sins my people have committed, I have already bid him farewell. Sprinkling Water said, then you want to join Marduk's side? I heard that goddess Murin won the bet with Enlil and can freely enter and exit Anunnaki's divine realm, so it's not impossible to introduce her to Marduk's side. Aman shook his head. The path I want to confirm may not be the same. There are the insights of predecessors and my own search. I have been thinking, how did the gods transcend eternal life, and what is the so-called divinity? I'm just a witness, I don't want to join any god system. These words were from the bottom of his heart. Aman was an anomaly, he had never received guidance from any divine clan, and he had solved the unsolved puzzles of Crazy, Ol and Bear in difficult explorations, and finally comprehended and mastered the power of the origin. He had already achieved the 8th level, and experienced everything in the spiritual imprint of Schrödinger, and even understood the torture of fate and the interrogation of the apocalypse. Before he became a true god, he did not need the guidance of any divine clan, he only needed to seek confirmation himself, and these were things that the Scorpion King did not know. Sprinkling Water smiled, maybe you are thinking too much, no matter who it is, whether you believe in it or not, the gods are there. I was once an emissary of the gods, and I have received the guidance of the oracle, so I know what is wrong with the power of the origin and what I practice, so I only think about how to become a true god who transcends eternal life. Don't think that I am strong enough to fight them in the mortal world, but as a living being, the meaning of existence is actually different. I also want to tell you one last thing, the Tiamat's wrath cannot kill a true god who transcends eternal life. Aman was actually surprised and replied, "Thank you for the reminder, I have read about the Tiamat's wrath, only that it can even severely injure the gods, but not that it can definitely destroy them." Is this the last thing you want to tell me? Sprinkling Water sighed and said, I once made a vow, although Tiamat who guided me has fallen, and I can no longer be driven by the Anunnaki divine clan, but the secret of the gods still cannot be revealed. Only when I become a true god who transcends eternal life and possess my own divine realm and divine system, will I be able to tell you what that path is. This is the agreement between the gods, and only then am I qualified to join this agreement, which is why I said those words to you. But there is already a ready-made shortcut, and there is no need to pin my hopes on this unseen hope. Now do you understand why the Lion King Zhoukai left, and why I ignored those gods? We all have our own desired path. Aman raised his glass and said, the agreement of the gods has nothing to do with me, but in any case, I want to thank you for telling me this today. I can see that you also want to find someone to talk to clarify and strengthen your beliefs in your talk. After drinking for half a day, the Scorpion King stretched out his arm for the first time and clinked his glass with Aman's. Wiser than I thought, you have really seen through a lot of things. In order to thank you for listening to me today, I will give you another promise, it is also a kind of hope. Sprinkling Water's words had unknowingly taken on the tone of a god, and in the legends of the Dubhi continent, divine emissaries like him who had passed the test of endless life could already be called gods, just like Batet in the past. And when they mentioned the true gods, they used the B title, which was the true god who transcends eternal life. Aman asked, what kind of hope? Sprinkling Water said meaningfully, it is a rare talent. But don't forget about the famous curse of the goddess, if one day I am injured like Yugalu and leave the Anunnaki divine clan, and I have become a true god who has transcended eternal life and established my own divine clan, I would welcome you to become a god of this divine clan. Welcome to the pantheon of gods. I wanted to discuss this with the Lion King, but he ran away. Aman replied, thank you for saying so, but I am not Yugalu. Perhaps you have misunderstood my relationship with Murin, I am just fulfilling my promise to the goddess, it has nothing to do with whether she loves me or not. The Scorpion King shook his head and said, if bad luck really comes one day, it will not be good, good luck. Aman hung his head and smiled bitterly. Even if Murin really has such a curse, I have already experienced enough suffering. Sprinkling Water stood up and patted Aman on the shoulder. You are not simple, just don't forget what I said today. That friend has been here for a long time, and it seems that he has something to do, solve your own problems first. The power of the Lion King's 3 roars was really amazing, and although Sprinkling Water had protected the ice and fire scorpions from harm, these 2 demon scorpions were still unconscious. Sprinkling Water picked up his 2 beloved concubines and left, the quicksand under his feet surging up and strangely disappearing. Aman looked back at the distant sky and said, Madanzo, how long have you been here? Come down and rest for a while. A white cloud floated down, and the crystal shuttle was put away. Madanzo staggered towards the sand dune and sat on the chair that sprinkling water had just sat on, gasping for breath. Aman looked at him and said with a smile, the wine is in front of you, how can you get drunk before you even drink it? Madanzo said with a bitter face, Ammonius. Luckily I came late and was far away. That Lion King's roar was too powerful, I almost fell down and barely managed to stabilize my body in the air. Aman pointed at the banquet in front of him and said, they have all left, don't waste the wine and delicacies. Eat and drink to your heart's content first, I think you look very tired. Metatro picked up the wine and tasted it. He exclaimed in admiration, good wine, a peerless wine. That Lion King really knows how to enjoy. The two enjoyed the almost untouched banquet. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, Aman asked, when did you arrive, what did you see, and what did you hear? Madanzo replied, I flew over from afar when I heard the Lion King's roar. Later, that group of strange fellows passed by and I heard their words. Who are they? Their words are strange, and they don't put on any airs, but it feels like they are even more arrogant than the gods. Aman said nonchalantly, ask them who they are, stick to your beliefs, and seek your own path. Instead of following Moses and the others to the plains of Duk, you came to find me on this road, did something happen again? Madanzo sighed, Ammonius, your people are simply a whirlpool, a magnet, no matter where they go, it would be surprising if they don't get into trouble. After Moses and the others left the border of Igut, they crossed the Saya Desert and entered the plains of Duk along the east bank of the inland lake, which should be the safest route. Because the west bank of the inland lake was the trade route between Igut and Hittite, there were now towns, farms, and garrison checkpoints, and the place where Aman was about to fight Celia was also in this area. Further ahead into the plains of Duk, there was also a large swamp, which was difficult to pass through. Moses and the others crossed from the east bank of the inland lake, which was near the Euphrates Valley. Although the road was very rugged, they could reach the plains directly after crossing the mountains. The plains of Duk had attracted explorers from surrounding countries, but it was difficult to see a place where people gathered in such a large wilderness, at least a year ago. But when Moses led his people over the mountains by the lake, they appeared in the valley leading to the plains. However, in front of him was a newly constructed city, or perhaps it was a city that was only half constructed. This was a resting place and trading market for explorers and warriors who killed monsters, and Moses and the others could have rested here and bought supplies before untying the ropes, but they were unexpectedly stopped by the army sent by this city. Moses and the others only had 60 people, while the other side had 800 warriors with various weapons, including highland giants who were good at fighting and organized into military formations. Moses was surprised and stepped forward to ask, we are just explorers who want to go deep into the wilderness, and we are not enemies of you. Like other explorers, we will exchange supplies and pay taxes in the town. Why did you summon so many warriors to stop us? The city under construction was actually called Marduk City, and the lord of the city was a short highland giant named Usser. He sent someone to Moses, we are the miners of the town of Duk who escaped from Igut, and if we want to enter the plains of Duk, we have two choices. Either they would remain in my city, profess Marduk, and swear in the shrine, or if they wish to return home by way of this place, they must promise the gods to build a shrine to Marduk in the place where they stand, and to perform the rite of summoning him to come. As a guarantee, you have to keep the leader here until the promise is fulfilled. Madanzo knew Usser, who was the leader of the United Highland Giant tribe who kidnapped Princess Scarlet. In fact, he was sent by Princess Scarlet to the plains of Duk to establish a city, and at that time he extorted a large batch of supplies from the town of Arcade. Now the location of this city was stuck on the throat of the eastern shore of the inland lake into the plains of Duk. Moses and the others did not force their way in, so Madanzo sneaked into Marduk city as a wandering hunter and found the owner of the city, Usser, to catch up. He woke Usser up in his bedroom in the middle of the night and forced the owner to let him go with a broken blade to his neck. Usser said in a sobbing tone, fearless warrior, that was not only an order from Princess Scarlet, but also an oracle from Marduk. Even if you kill me, it will be useless, and if you kill me, you won't be able to escape. Madanzo was surprised. Marduk's oracle, what's going on? Usher explained, I don't know what's going on either. I built this city, took on the role of the owner and chief priest here, and gained the support of Princess Scarlet and the kingdom of Babylon. After the shrine was defeated, I led several priests to perform the ceremony, and that night Marduk spoke in my soul. The god told me that the miners of the town of Duk would be passing through here, and that they must promise not to build statues for any gods except Marduk, otherwise they would not be allowed to pass. The situation was beyond Madanzo's control, and he immediately rushed back to discuss it with Link. They made two sets of plans, either let John lead the army of Duk to fight and open a path for Moses and the others, or let Moses and the others turn back and go around the west bank of the inland lake, avoiding the scale of Marduk's control. The former plan was too expensive, and the city built under the leadership of Aesop was just beginning to take shape. Although the warriors led by John were not afraid of fighting Marduk, they would also have to suffer losses on both sides. The latter plan was difficult, and Moses and the others would have to pass through the land controlled by Saya, and after crossing the inland lake, they would have to pass through the impassable charcoal marsh. The two decided to make two preparations, with Madanzo going to explore the way first, while Link rushed to the town of Duk and told John to get ready to meet them. When Link returned to Duk, he learned that there had also been an accident there. At the foot of the Saya Plateau to the north of Duk, a large group of Highlanders suddenly appeared. They did not look like the inhabitants of the mountain tribes, and were obviously trained in an organized way. Carrying all kinds of equipment and supplies with them, they quickly set up camps and fortifications, forming the prototype of a city at an astonishing speed. This was obviously not a spontaneous action, they were strong and well-trained, their resources were in order, and the deployment of their personnel was extremely orderly, as though they were soldiers and logistics personnel that had been trained for a long time. The settlement they built was less than 100 miles away from the city built by Link, and they occupied the fertile land to open up wasteland and sow seeds. They also occupied the mines where the Dushians originally mined parangons and iron ores. They organized people to mine the parangon cores and iron ores and smelt refined iron on the spot. They were obviously preparing for large-scale immigration and advancing to the entire plains of Duk. The city built by Link occupied the largest piece of fertile land on the plains of Duk, and there was a conflict after the outsiders occupied the mines. Fortunately, Link and the others had already built strong walls, and under the governance of Aesop, they already had a large population and a firm foothold. Otherwise, they would not have been able to compete with the other party. Link and Madanzo were not there, and Aesop avoided conflict at first. Later, John came with 36 personal guards, using the warriors' might formation trained by Madanzo, and asked the other party to abandon the occupied mines. There were two battles, and neither side gained the upper hand. So they began to negotiate. The other party believed that the mines were originally ownerless, and John took out the title deed of Duk to prove that it was not ownerless, that people had been mining since ancient times, and that roads had been built and veins had been dug. The other party said that the Dukian miners had long disappeared due to the punishment of the gods, and they were unwilling to give up the most precious mines on the continent. In fact, both sides understood that it was the most important strategic base for establishing a foothold on the plains of Duk and annexing thousands of miles of fertile land. Warrior John fought another battle with them and found that it was not a problem to rely on his city to defend it, but it was not possible to repel those people, so he sat down for a second negotiation. John did not have reinforcements, and the other party's troops were gradually increasing. They came across the Saya Plateau, and the walls built around the fake settlement were getting stronger and stronger. The first permanent building built was the Shrine of Enril. It was obviously unlucky for John to continue to attack under such circumstances, and Aesop made another suggestion at the right time. Aesop used to lack strong labor to mine ore and/or cores, and now the residents were no longer the Dukian miners of the past, but mainly the barbarians, who had absorbed the scattered tribes of the nearby area and the wandering explorers of the surrounding countries. They had to plant land to feed themselves and build a city, and simply could not spare enough strong labor to mine such a large mine. So Aesop suggested that the two sides cooperate. As long as the mine was recognized as belonging to the Dushians, the other party could organize strong and powerful Highlanders to do the heavy mining work, and in return, they could keep the ore and/or cores they mined, or they could let Aesop buy them at a fair price on the continent. This was a good idea that had the best of both worlds. The two parties were accumulating power, and they did not want to have a full-scale conflict with the barbarians and other tribes who already had a foothold, so they agreed to this condition of cooperation, and the Plains of Duk restored temporary peace. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.